outside. Does he stop looking like a damn thief?
I usually have one
It's
up upstairs.
cheap stuff.
I have one upstairs usually. Yeah, it's Lourdes, yeah. Yeah.
I think Jordan has to do the unknowing, right?
Yep, I'll have someone bring it down.
One more time. Oh, sorry.
How are you, sir? Good, how you doing? Just want to say hello.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah.
You know, I just got over the first 2 weeks. But I'm not the one that I know I'm nursing. The reason I went that was we were going to take care of my mom. You've done this before. Yeah. And I had like a...
Did you want to keep it?
But I had allergies too.
It's
And my wife said it's for allergies. I'm like, I stayed home. Wednesday, I stayed on Thursday morning. And Thursday, took all the cheese. And I said, everything's I got it. I said, I'm going to come in. I'm supposed to go. This is great. So we're going to have a test. It wasn't but thankfully, my mom was vaccinated. You know, vaccinated. So, but nonetheless, you just don't know. It's scary.
Half match for a reason? Because I know it's they're all 3 halfway down the pole.
I'm sure we are, but it's usually only based upon what the governor does in the federal government. I don't know what it is. I can find out.
There's some politician guy there.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. All members of the public will be offered sufficient opportunity to make comments and be heard during the meeting. If any member of the public would like to register now to speak during open discussion or public participation, please press 5* now. You'll be provided with another opportunity to raise your hand and speak during open discussion or public participation. You'll have to press 5* on your keypad at that time, and I will call on you in the order that your hand is raised.
Deputy Chief? Oh, yeah. Long time no see. I'm sure I recognize you. I recognize you from here. Yeah, the first 2 weeks in August. Hey, DC. Was on my so I was otherwise healthy. I was, fairly old and I was in house arrest. Yeah, that was wicked. I was going crazy. Yeah, you see? Are they guys there?
How's it going, Deputy Chief?
All right, I think we just saw Commissioner Scudo's car, so let's just wait another second here before we get started.
Okay.
How you doing? All right? Good. How are you? Good to see you, Coach.
Okay, we're good? All right, Ms. Bravo, we're set?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to call to order the special meeting of the Sunrise City Commission. Ms. Bravo, if you would, please call the roll.
Mayor Ryan,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Kirch,
Here.
Assistant Deputy Mayor Guzman,
Here.
Commissioner Douglas,
Yes, here.
Commissioner Scudo,
Present.
City Manager Mark Lebowski,
Present.
City Attorney Kimberly Kislin,
Present.
Administrative Aide Lourdes Lawrence, City Clerk Felicia Bravo here.
All right, good afternoon. The City Commission has scheduled a special meeting. It's been noticed both as an in-person meeting and a virtual meeting. The public may attend in person or participate in the meeting via conference call by calling 954-395-2401 and entering the access code 368262. In addition, the public may view the live streaming video of the meeting at www.sunrisefl.gov under Commission Agendas by clicking on the video link for today's meeting. Procedures for public participation and comments will be explained in a moment. Information for each item on the agenda has been and is currently available at City Hall and online 24 hours a day on our website at www.sunrisefl.gov. Anyone interested is also invited to call 954-746-3430 for additional information. As I said, the city has provided various options for members of the public to address the commission. Prior to the start of the meeting, we asked if anyone wished to speak on any matter before us. We've maintained that list, and I will call upon speakers at an appropriate time. I'll also open this hearing up for public comment at the appropriate time, and I ask anyone who is attending to go ahead and press 5* on your phone if you wish to be heard. We'll attempt to take the comments in the order that they're requested. All comments will be included as part of the public record for this meeting and will be considered by the City Commission prior to any action taken. When addressing the City Commission, please state your name, address, and what you're here to speak about. I'd also ask everyone to put their phones on mute until you wish to speak. It'll cut down on any unintended interruption of the meeting. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties on the call or on the video, you may call 954-747-4661 at any time. Our staff is available to assist you. I ask the understanding of everyone given the challenging circumstances, and we'll get through this process with understanding, patience, and civility. Do I have a motion to dispense?
Move it.
Motion by Deputy Mayor, seconded by?
Second.
By Commissioner Scudo. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we have open discussion. I'll go ahead and open up open discussion. This is for the public. What I would ask, if you're here to speak on any matters unrelated to our public hearing 5A, go ahead and press 5-star on your phone at this time or raise your hand. Troy, I don't see any hands raised on the phone. Can you confirm?
I confirm, Mayor. I don't see any hands raised.
All right, and no one here has asked to speak in open discussion, so we'll close open discussion. All right, public hearings. A, emergency suspension. A resolution of the City of Sunrise, Florida, confirming the police chief's suspension of the extended hours license for Congo's Entertainment Corporation, DBA Congo's Nightclub, after a public hearing and providing effective date. City Manager Mark Lebelski, Anthony Rosa, Police Chief. Do I need a motion? Motion by Deputy Mayor. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Douglas. At this time, Madam City Attorney, would you please read the extended hours statement for the purposes of this public hearing?
Thank you. This is a public hearing regarding the police chief's emergency suspension of the extended hours license issued to Congo's Entertainment Corp., DBA Congo's Nightclub. Congo's will be referred to as licensee. Under Section 3-12B2 of the city's code, if the police chief finds that an immediate serious danger to the public health, safety, or welfare requires emergency suspension, or the immediate imposition of additional conditions or restrictions upon the extended hours license, he may summarily order said suspension or may summarily impose additional conditions or restrictions. The notice of immediate action shall be personally served upon the licensee or posted in a conspicuous place at the establishment of the licensee, and the notice shall also advise the licensee that he or she may request a public hearing before the City Commission, challenging the need for summary action by making a written request within 5 business days of being served with this notice. In this case, the licensee timely requested an emergency public hearing be conducted by the City Commission. The purpose of this emergency public hearing is to allow the licensee a reasonable opportunity to speak and present evidence on its behalf. The City Commission will review the suspension of the extended hours license de novo, which means that the City Commission decides the issues without reference to any legal conclusion or assumption made by the police chief. The hearing will be conducted by the City Commission, which will hear testimony in the following order. City staff will report its analysis, call any witnesses, and introduce any evidence. And I understand that Mr. Russman and Congas have reached a stipulation of facts, and that may shortcut some of this process where we may not need as many witnesses. The licensee will also be able to testify, call any witnesses, and introduce any evidence. The formal rules of evidence do not apply to this hearing. The city clerk will swear in all witnesses before they speak. Each person who approaches the podium to speak should state his or her name and whether or not the person has been sworn in. Any party, which is the city staff or licensee, or any party's witnesses may be cross-examined. If a party or witness refuses to be cross-examined, the testimony of that party or witness may not be considered or may be given lesser credibility by the City Commission. All cross-examination should be conducted in a courteous manner. The material in the City Commission's agenda package, as well as the information in the Police Department's files and Community Development's files, will be considered part of the record. After city staff and the licensee have testified and presented their cases, the hearing will be opened up to members of the public to speak in support or against the suspension. The members of the public may choose to be sworn in. If a member of the public chooses not to be sworn in, the City Commission may consider that as a factor in evaluating the speaker's comments. After members of the public speak, city staff and the licensee may make additional statements. The public will be given an additional opportunity to comment. The hearing will then be closed and the matter decided by the City Commission. The City Commission is reviewing the emergency suspension of the extended hours license issued to Congo's Entertainment Corp., DBA Congo's Nightclub de novo, and based upon competent, substantial evidence introduced at the hearing. Section 312B2 of the City's Code, titled Emergency Public Hearing on Suspension or Imposition, provides in pertinent part, if the police chief finds that an immediate serious danger to the public health, safety, or welfare requires emergency suspension, or the immediate imposition of additional conditions or restrictions, he may summarily order said suspension or may summarily impose additional conditions or restrictions. The police chief will only take that action necessary to protect the public interest. The police chief will provide the licensee with all information required by subsection 1 and will additionally disclose the specific facts and reasons for finding an immediate danger to the public health, safety, or welfare, and his or her reasons for concluding that the action taken is necessary to protect the public interest. The subsection 1 that is referred to identifies the following factors during the extended hours of operations. A, compliance with all conditions imposed at the time the extended hours license was issued. And at the time the commission imposed the extended hours license, it imposed these conditions: that it shall continue to meet the conditions in section 311A5 of the code, which I'll explain in a minute, that the licensee must renew the extended hours license no later than April 24, 2018, and every year thereafter, and that the licensee shall continue to comply with prior resolutions for the following: that the applicant will notify the Sunrise Police Department 45 days in advance of hosting any special promoted event in order to request an off-duty detail at the applicant's expense. The detail will provide for at least 2 law enforcement officers to be present during and at least 1/2 hour after the event. If the detail is not filled, the Sunrise Police Department will notify the applicant no less than 2 weeks in advance. If adequate security measures cannot be arranged, as determined by the chief of police or his designee, the event will be canceled or postponed. The second condition is that the applicant will obtain, at the applicant's expense, an off-duty detail for Friday and Saturday nights with the number of law enforcement officers required by the chief of police or his designee. The detail will be present for 3 1/2 hours prior to closing for a minimum of 4 hours. The conditions in section 311A5 of the code require that during all hours of operation, that the licensee provide a security camera system, post exterior warning signage stating that loitering is prohibited, and participate in the City of Sunrise No Trespassing program, comply with the Florida's Responsible Vendor Act, not relinquish control of the operation or management of the establishment to any other person or entity, offer free taxi cab service or free towing to intoxicated patrons, post signage indicating the maximum capacity persons for the establishment, meet all requirements and licenses associated in order to serve, sell, or allow the consumption of alcohol on premises, and provide the required minimum number of off-duty police officers for a minimum of 4 hours, licensed Florida security guards, or a combination thereof as determined and for the period of time approved by the chief of police or his designee. The chief of police or his designee may periodically review and adjust his recommendation as to the required staffing and minimum required hours for off-duty police or security officers based on the availability of off-duty police officers and current security conditions at the establishment and within its vicinity. Additionally, the licensee is required to exercise all reasonable precautions to discourage unlawful activity, including vandalism, crimes against property or persons, disturbances, loitering of patrons, narcotics use or distribution, excessive noise, vehicular use by intoxicated patrons, and illegal activity of any kind by employees, patrons, or others associated with the establishment. The licensee is required to exercise all reasonable efforts to prevent nuisances both inside and outside the establishment and not exceed the number of occupants set by city building and fire officials as to the maximum capacity for the establishment. Finally, let me direct you that your decision at the conclusion of the hearing must be based on competent, substantial evidence related to the city's code and not generalized opposition that is not fact-based. Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Kislin. If you would, I'd like to begin by having you read the legal standard. I know we were going to do that at the end, but if you would, for the benefit of everybody here at the outset, and then we'll address it again at the end of the hearing. If you could, please.
Sure. The legal standard for competent substantial evidence is that the record must contain substantial competent evidence to sustain a decision on appeal. Substantial competent evidence is such evidence as will establish a substantial basis of fact from which the facts at issue can be reasonably inferred. It is such relevant evidence as a reasonable mind would accept as adequate to support a conclusion. Ultimately, the City Commission must decide whether such competent substantial evidence has been introduced into evidence at the hearing. The courts are divided in determining whether the testimony of citizens constitutes competent substantial evidence.
Thank you, Ms. Kislin. All right, we are going to proceed in a formal matter, and we're going to do it in a civil fashion. At this time, what I'd ask is that anyone who's here to testify either on behalf of the city or the licensee to please come forward to the podium so you can be sworn in. I understand the parties have stipulated to some facts, but nonetheless, let's make sure we have the parties, the witnesses who may be called to testify. So if you would, starting with the licensee, please come to the podium, identify yourself.
Sherry Bowman.
And?
Frank Bowman.
Okay. Anyone else that you intend to call?
No, sir.
All right. If you could just step to your right for 1 second. Mr. Rossman.
Your Honor, at this time, Chief, just in case, I'm going to have the Chief come up. I think we're going to rely on the stipulation, but you may have questions for the Chief, so I'll have the Chief come forward.
All right. And in the event that there's any additional facts, do you have additional witnesses who are here?
There may be one on the phone who's not here.
Okay, but you'll have someone who you will present by phone?
There is an officer available. He's out sick on leave, but he is available by phone if we need him.
Okay.
I don't believe we're going to need him, but he is available.
All right. If you would, Chief, go ahead and identify yourself.
Anthony Rosa, Chief of Police, City of Sunrise.
Okay, thank you. If you could step to your left. If there's anybody in the public who wishes to be heard on this, I will give you an opportunity before the close of the hearing to speak. You may wish to be sworn in and cross-examined by the parties, but you do not have to be sworn in. I would ask at this time, just so we can keep order of this, if there's someone who wishes to speak from the public in support or against, please identify yourself in the hall by raising your hand and coming forward. And if you're on the phone, go ahead and press 5* on your phone so that we can identify you. No one in the hall has come forward. Tori, can you confirm no one has raised their hand?
I confirm, Mayor, I don't see any hands raised.
All right. That being said, we'll open it up again for public comment, public hearing at an appropriate time, so this isn't your last opportunity to be heard in this matter. Ms. Bravo, if you would, please swear in the witnesses.
Yes, could you all please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right. I accept all the witnesses have been sworn. We'll begin with a presentation by the city staff. I understand, Mr. Rossman, you are representing the city for the purposes of the suspension of the extended hours license. And if you would, I know there's a number of exhibits that you may be introducing. If you'd like to begin with that, we'll go through those in order, and then you can outline for us how you wish to proceed.
I would like to do so.
What are you offering?
There are 5 listed exhibits. Exhibit number 1 is Chief Rosa's letter of August 7th giving notice.
All right. Have you provided all of these exhibits, the 5 exhibits, to the licensee? You have a copy?
I have. Yes. They each have a packet, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Bowman's indicating that he has a copy. All right. So Exhibit 1, that's 26 pages. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Exhibit 2?
Exhibit 2 is the joint stipulation that was entered into between the parties, Sherry and Frank Bowman, myself as special counsel in this matter.
Okay.
Exhibit 3 is 4 pages of 2 reports, 2 specific police reports. These are the reports that were authored by the undercover officers that went inside Conga's establishment on August the 6th that night, and their observations.
All right, so let's just go back. The Exhibit 2 is 4 pages, 27 paragraphs. It's been signed off by Sherry and Frank Bowman. Is that correct? You guys have signed this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you've answered in the affirmative. And Mr. Osman, you've executed this as well.
I have, Your Honor, yes.
Okay.
And I prepared it.
Okay, perfect. So Exhibit 3 is how many pages?
Exhibit 3 should be 4 pages.
Okay.
And it is a compilation of 2 separate undercover officers' reports. The last 4th page is the second officer, the other 3 in reference to the first undercover officer, and their observations on the night of August the 6th inside Congress.
Okay.
Exhibit 4 is 1 page, and this is an exhibit that was sent to me by Mr. and Mrs. Bowman. This is a resignation letter from the person that they had entered into an agreement with in July that took managing control of Congas at that time and had made certain assurances to them. And this person had resigned as of 3 o'clock this afternoon today. Exhibit 5 is the Sunbiz documentation showing that, in fact, Sherry Bowman is now president again. Prior to that, it was the person who resigned.
Okay. You're offering all 5 of those exhibits into evidence?
I am, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Bowman, Ms. Bowman, if you would, please come to the podium. I understand you are not represented by counsel, is that correct?
That's correct.
Have you had the opportunity to be represented by counsel in this proceeding?
We've had some discussions, but we've elected not to be represented by.
All right. Are you prepared to proceed today with the hearing?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. And do you agree to the admission of these 5 exhibits into the record?
Yes, sir.
All right. To be clear, if you could just tell me what your role is, and then we'll go back to Mr. Rossman. What is your role with Congas as identified in the Sunbiz document, which is Congas Entertainment Corporation?
Sherry is listed as the president of the corporation. Sherry's my wife, and I'm assisting to manage the business.
All right.
Mayor, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Yes.
If the Mr. and Mrs. Bowman could speak a little louder into the mic so the folks can hear.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right.
She's, and I apologize for Sherry. She's recovering from, we'll talk about that later, but so her voice is a little chalky.
Okay, that's fine. But you are the president?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I am. I'm the president.
Okay. Who are the owners of Congas Entertainment Corporation?
I am.
100%?
Yes.
Okay, as of today?
As of today, yes.
Okay. All right. I'm sure there'll be some more questions for you from the commission and from staff. For right now, you can have a seat. You've agreed to the admission of these. Mr. Rossman, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd ask everybody to look at the joint stipulation exhibit number 2, and I'd like to explain how the stipulation came about and its significance. So I was tasked and hired to support the chief's notice of emergency suspension letter. I am contracted through the city attorney's office to the police department on complicated cases and such as a legal advisor. And this case, I was contacted by the city attorney, by the chief, when the chief prepared his notice. So it's my job to present substantial competent evidence, if there is substantial competent evidence, to the commission, as the way I look at it as jurors from where I'm standing, to determine if in fact the chief's notice can be supported. I believe there is substantial competent evidence, and that is what is laid out in this stipulation. The way the stipulation came about, I have been talking for the past 8-9 days with counsel who had represented that he was, at the time, representing Congas. Mr. and Mrs. Bowman were not fully in control of Congas again at that time. They were trying to get control back. Once they got control of Congas, the counsel told me last Friday that he was terminated, his services were terminated, and I reached out to the Bowmans directly over the weekend, and we discussed over the weekend what I believed the facts were that I could prove by calling police witnesses and city staff. They told me at that time that they did not disagree with any of that. They had the chief's notice, the letter, and they had no intention in fighting it. That they believe all those things happened. They have some explanations as to, the mitigation, that they were not directly and personally involved in that at the time. But I said, that's nice, but I need something written and signed, or I need to call witnesses. So I drafted this stipulation over the course of the day yesterday and into early this morning, actually, and they have read it. I appreciate the question you asked, Mr. Mayor, that they are not with counsel. They are intelligent people. They have come forward freely and voluntarily as a member of the bar. If I did not think so, I would not draft this and present it for their signature. They have had input. You will see that there are paragraphs from jump ahead. I'm starting on page 3, starting with, I believe it's paragraph 16. Let me go back and make sure there's not the one before. Yeah, starting page 3, paragraph 16, you will see paragraphs that start with special counsel accepts and acknowledges. These were representations that Frank and Sherry Bowman made to me, and I told them I have no authority to bind the commission as to whether the commission accepts these. I'm in a position as an advocate to say I accept their representations as a stipulation of fact. They are representing these things to be true. I told them they may be questioned about those things, but I also was able to verify almost every single paragraph, independently of what they had said to me. So a stipulation comes from two parties coming together, not just from me dictating to them what those facts are. But it was important that I provide you with substantial competent evidence so that if your decision were attacked in some other venue, that it could be defended. So I would like to have you focus on paragraph number 5 on page 1 acknowledges the chief's letter in its entirety, that it was served upon Congas. Very important that they have due process, that they know where to be and how to be and what it is that this meeting is going to talk about. And they have stipulated to that being a fact that they received that. Paragraph number 6 talks about the letter that was sent by their counsel, and it does say at the time. They may explain to you that that was not at their request, but the fact is they acknowledge that on August 11th, counsel for Congas did in fact send a letter and request this hearing, and it's what brings us here today. Paragraph 7, that notice was provided, and that's also what brings us here today. Important that Congress has recognized that they have been provided due process. They have right to counsel. You have asked, Mr. Mayor, about that, and they have now come forward and told you that. They have voluntarily chosen to proceed, and they've made not just a business decision, but a conscious decision to present their case in the manner that they want to present it. Paragraph 9 just talks about how the stipulation came about. On Saturday via email and Sunday via phone conferences, we discussed whether I explained to them the witnesses I intended to call, most of them by name, what I believed it is they would testify to before the commission, that they had the opportunity to cross-examine those witnesses if they chose to do so. And in discussing all of that, they said, we take no issue with it. And I said, if you take no issue with it, then we can agree, and I can put it in writing and send it to them so they have an opportunity to review it. And that is how it came about. And I will say, in my dealings with the Bowmans, they have been nothing but cooperative, which is how this stipulation came about. And that is number 10, that they take no exception to the factual allegations and admit same is true as set forth in the chief's emergency suspension. So if we can then go back to Exhibit 1 for a moment, paragraph 10 is essentially where they are admitting the allegations, and if we go to Exhibit number 1, the chief's notice, starting at the bottom, the chief listed specific allegations that were violations of the extended hours license. Failing to properly search for weapons and firearms prior to entering the establishment, creating a potential for a dangerous situation to develop. That fact is now admitted before you. Allowed open and obvious illegal narcotic use in and outside of the premises. This includes the arrest of one patron for possession of felony narcotics. That is a fact that is now stipulated to and admitted for your consideration. Illegally operated an adult entertainment establishment or regulated use within a B3 zoning district. That fact is now established and stipulated to. I think what you're going to hear is, again, they were not the managing controlling partner at the time, but they have stipulated that that is, in fact, true. Illegally allowed patrons to expose themselves and urinate in public is a fact that's stipulated and something you can rely upon as evidence. Illegally invited food trucks without obtaining a special event permit in violation of the city code is a fact that is now admitted to, stipulated to, and proven before you. Illegal restriction of parking in travel areas for unpermitted valet and specifically paid parking in violation of the city code. This includes security walking the parking lot and collecting money for parking. That is what the chief knew at the time. That is what the chief noticed them for and noticed Congas. When I say them, I want to be careful. I should say noticed Congas, which is an entity. And then the lawyer for Congas wrote the letter and asked for this hearing. In that time frame, the Bowmans have been trying to get back control and have, through Exhibits 4 and 5, proven that they have control of Congas again. So again, number 11, if we come back to Exhibit number 2, paragraph 11 on page 2, though they were not though they have stated, and I accept the representation that they were not the managing controlling partner on August 6th, they admit, Congas admits the allegations, the licensees admit the allegations and the findings set forth in the chief's emergency suspension and constitute violations of the extended hours license. And they admit that it's sufficient grounds for the police chief's actions. Ultimately, you have to make that finding, but they are making an admission that there is in fact substantial competent evidence to support the chief's actions. Number 12 as well, they admit the violations constitute sufficient grounds and approve, for you to approve and uphold the chief's actions. Paragraph number 13, they recognize its responsibility, Congress' responsibility to take all measures necessary to prevent future violations moving forward. And they acknowledge that the city expressly reserves the right to initiate appropriate legal action to prevent or prohibit any future violations of the applicable code. And I think that they intend to discuss that with you, that they believe that that will not occur. Number 14, that they understand that what we're talking about here today, this first sentence is designed to say this is just a hearing for you to determine whether the chief was correct in sending the notice that he sent. That's it. And that's what I've been hired to do, prevent use of substantial competent evidence of that. This is not the revocation hearing, if there is to be one. They have received notice of it. They have acknowledged that. They realize that there is presently a revocation notice out there with a possible hearing for September 14th. And I believe they also have received notice of code violations and a hearing or hearings on September 20th, all from the same conduct, arising out of the same conduct on that same day. But they are aware of that today what we're doing, and this stipulation and agreement is for you to make this decision tonight. 15, they acknowledge and agree that they shall not initiate any claims against the City of Sunrise in federal or state court arising out of this action. That was important because you'll know in the letter that you received, I guess there were some allegations, or it was certainly implied that that might be the case, and they wanted it to be very clear that that is not their attorney. They did not ask or approve that letter, and that is not where they're coming from. So that was important on both parties' count. Number 16, where we get into representations they've made to me, that they entered into an agreement in July of 2021 giving up managing control of Congas to someone else as part of a business agreement. Now, that would be a violation of 3-11A5D, to not relinquish control. However, that was not noticed. The chief was not aware of that fact at the time. And that is not something that was considered, or I would say to be considered by you, because it is not part of the notice. They are aware of that now, and they have taken control back and remedied that, what I would say, that violation.
So, Mr. Rossman, we're going to have some questions for you in a second for everybody, and I want to talk to you about the procedural. Can you just finish the representation, then we'll deal with some of the questions.
Yeah, but Mr. Mayor, I have a question, Mr.
Yes,
Rossman. You said they were not on notice. Would that not have been part of the initial notice you're placed on when you get the license?
Yes, absolutely. And in the revocation hearing, I would say that would be appropriate. But for today's purposes, when I said notice, the chief sent them a letter saying specifically he called an emergency and cut down their extended licensing based on the factors in his letter. So that's when I say they weren't on notice from the chief. The chief did not notice them that was a violation that he considered when he wrote the letter. And that's why I say that. So limited to my role providing competent, substantial evidence of the chief's decision, it wasn't something the chief considered nor something I considered. They are still admitting to it, I would say to their credit, so to speak. They're admitting that happened, and they have rectified it and taken it back. But ultimately, I believe that would be for another day.
But that would be coming from staff, not from the chief. Because staff knows that, we know that, they know that. This is just what the chief wrote.
Yes.
But a staff's report would say this in it, because staff didn't have input in that.
And
this
I
only
believe,
came from the chief.
Yes, and staff has prepared the notice of revocation and has sent them that for the 14th.
Okay.
Correct. And
For the purposes of this hearing, it's the 6 items that are contained in the August 7th letter that you need to present as substantial competent evidence. If the commission agrees with that, then it upholds the emergency suspension. That'll be suspended until the revocation hearing or some other time. Is that correct?
Correct. The way I see it, there's 2 things that the commission will vote on. One is the chief's letter upheld by substantial competent evidence? If the answer to that is yes, then the question, it's totally up to the commission to extinguish it, though it was proper at the time, to extend it, or to do as you please. That's the remedy, and I believe that's really the sole discretion of the commission itself. My job is to bring evidence for you to make that decision. Was the chief's letter appropriate at the time, and can it be defended by substantial competent evidence?
So which part of the stipulation should I ignore as I'm sitting up here today? Because I see this in front of me as part of the consideration today. I know I'm hearing most of it you ought not to be focused on.
No, sir, I would not say most of it. The entire stipulation is something I think you should consider in whether or not they violated the 6 things the chief laid out in his notice.
Okay. All right, you can go ahead, sir.
But it's your position procedurally and substantively, while there may be violations of 3-11A5, because they were not put in the August 7th letter, that's not for this commission's consideration today. It may be for a later date, there may be violations, it may even be stipulated to, but for the purposes of this record and what you are presenting and requesting of the commission, the first step, and then the remedy will be for us, is not to consider anything that is outside of the August 7th letter. Correct.
And I brought that up because I know that that's in the what the city attorney read as far as what different types of violations are. Part of me wanted to also give them credit for acknowledging something that had happened. It's certainly not something that could have been hidden anyway, but they brought forward when that happened and what they did to remedy that situation.
Okay, thank you.
Paragraph 17, the parties agree that the City of Sunrise staff became concerned about advertisements on social media stating that Vegas Cabaret was coming to Congas, and in response to those advertisements, a meeting was held between city staff and Frank Bowman, at which, you'll see paragraph 18, Frank Bowman attended with his counsel of choice at the time, I should say Congas counsel of choice at the time, and he made assurances that no violations would occur. And I think whether I call him or he testifies in narrative, Mr. Bowman, I expect, is going to tell you that he was sincere at that time and believed that to be the case and had received assurances of that. But that's not part of the stipulation. Based after that meeting, that he and counsel specifically went to Congas nightclub and briefed all the staff there about what the city rules were, and told the people managing the club, or the people managing the club assured them that all the rules and ordinances would be followed, and that he received that assurance. Again, I don't have evidence of that independent. What I am saying here, I'm stipulating that they have represented that to me, and I accept that representation to them. You give it credibility, you're the trier of fact.
Are you intending to present city staff who were a part of that meeting?
I'm sorry?
Are you intending to present city staff who were part of that meeting?
I'm not, unless I can.
Okay.
There were 5 or 6 people there, including fire, police, city attorney's office, and the community development director, and I believe assistant city manager.
Okay.
But they are stipulating that meeting occurred, okay, and that they were told. The reason that's important to me, the paragraph 18, is that they were on notice. They were told by the city, we see this coming. Even though it is their position, they did not see it coming. The city brought them together and said, we see this coming, this is a problem, and the city received assurances that it would not happen. And I think Mr. Bowman will explain why he made those assurances, that he did not make them lightly. But he was wrong. I believe clearly, as we stand here now, based on the evidence that's now admitted as evidence, that he was wrong. Paragraph 20, I accept his representation, specifically the second half, that, well, first of all, that he was not present at Congas on Friday, August 6th. He did not arrange for or authorize the behavior leading to the violations, but he agrees in paragraph 21, Sherry and Frank Bowman agree on behalf of Congas, as the authorized representatives of Congas, that as the owners, they're still responsible for the actions of the people managing the Congas on August 6th, 2021. I accepted their representation that Mr. Bowman, and he can testify under oath, says that he was duped by the people he allowed to manage the Congas. That word is in quotes, not air quotes. That is a quote from Mr. Bowman to me. That he and maybe Frank would lie based on the lack of business they've had through COVID and some other issues, that these people were brought to him as somebody that might be able to reinvigorate the club, and he accepted those representations, and that he was duped by them, and that is why they said also that he was mortified and embarrassed by the allegations in the chief's notice. But they do acknowledge again that they are responsible for the actions of those managing Congas. That's paragraph 23. I accept the representation that they have once again taken managing control over Congas, and they can act as they stand before you here today. It was very, very important for me to have some sort of verification, which are exhibits 4 and 5, that they in fact are the authorized representatives of Congas. Otherwise, they come before you. If somebody else had managing control, it would mean nothing. Their stipulation would mean nothing.
Mr., on the question of stipulation meaning something or not, is there a reason we didn't write this as like a sworn statement, they identify the parties and then I stipulate, swear? Because at that point we could just accept it as statements of fact where, for example, the good gentleman is the manager, she's the owner. It's written, I accept and acknowledge But, why wasn't it just written as a sworn statement and have it notarized, and then, it's just all they are acknowledged?
Two reasons. Until Friday, they were represented by counsel. So I could not speak to them directly without counsel being present. So counsel was controlling the conversation on Conga's side of it.
They're saying it's not their lawyer, so is it their lawyer or is it not their lawyer?
But as of last Friday, they were still not the managing controlling partner of Conga's. So Conga's, the licensee that the city is moving against, had a lawyer representing it, and that lawyer was controlling the conversation on Conga's side. That lawyer notified me at 5:15 on Friday that he had been terminated from representation, and that the Bowmans were taking control, and he had been told by the controlling partner that person was going to give control back to the Bowmans. Whatever that agreement was, I'm not privy to, but that they were going to have control, and since they were going to have control, they wanted to control the presentation before you all. So working on Saturday and Sunday, the best I could do, first time speaking to them actually for hours on Sunday, was to put together a stipulation such as this, as opposed to get a court reporter and try to swear them, knowing full well they're going to appear before you, they've already been sworn, and they're going to answer any questions you ask of them. I fully expect that there's not going to be a question that they don't answer under oath.
So would you suggest then that we swear them in and repeat all of these to them and have them acknowledge it on the record? Because it seems to me this will also float into the next proceeding, and I want to make sure that if there are any defects here, that we remedy it now.
I don't think that is necessary, and so that you understand where I'm coming from, a stipulation is an admission of facts. And that's why they have signed to it. So it is essentially a sworn statement. The difference between a stipulation is it's not one party's sworn statement. So there would be a sworn statement from Mr. Bowman, a sworn statement from Ms. Bowman, and then I would still have to call all the witnesses to present the evidence that I believe would come forward. In a stipulation, they're saying, we agree to all those things. And therefore, I agree to some of the representations they've made. But again, whether those representations are accepted by you is a wholly different thing, because you determine what's credible and what's not. So paragraph 23, I've talked about that. It's not just my word, it's not their word. We have exhibits 4 and 5, which prove they are the authorized representatives of Conga now. They have managing control, and they can act on behalf of Congas. Very, very important for what we're doing here today. Paragraph 24, they represented to me that Frank specifically represented to me, that they have a track record in the city as responsible business owners. And they're pledging no such violations will occur in the future now that they are the managing controlling interest. Again, I told them I don't know their track record. I believe many of you may and other people in the city may. I accepted his representation that they have been business owners here and that they have a good track record. But again, that is not, that doesn't necessarily mean their track record is perfect. It means that I accept that they represented that to me. Finally, no alterations unless they're in writing, and I can tell you there are no other stipulations. That is the point of that paragraph. And that this is the complete stipulation relating to today's subject matter before the commission. Very important also as an attorney dealing with non-attorneys that I can tell you no agreements, promises, or representations have been made between myself and the Bowmans other than what is in writing. I have not promised them. I have told them my authority is limited to the presentation of facts. I don't have a vote, I don't have an opinion, and I'm not an employee of the city, and it's very important they understood that, and many times explain to them again that I'm not their lawyer. They did ask a lot of questions, and I would deem intelligent questions, and I advised them I couldn't give them legal advice. They had a lawyer, there's a lot of other lawyers out there they could choose to hire if they chose to, but I think that they are freely and voluntarily coming forward in signing this stipulation. So I think that lays before the commission substantial, competent evidence that can be defended if it were attacked, to say that the chief's notice, his letter, and not only his notice, but his action and the emergency suspension was well-founded and can be upheld.
All right. Do you have any other witnesses you wish to present other than the exhibits you have here and the argument you just made? There's going to be questions from the commission here in a moment, but anything else you wish to present?
Honestly, I don't. The whole point of the stipulation was to try to get every fact that we could get in an acceptable manner. So my presentation, again, trying to provide you with substantial, competent evidence that can be defended, I believe is finished.
All right. Are there any other records you wish to introduce other than these 5 exhibits?
Well, the stipulation does reference all police reports and all city staff reports, and I need to find specifically, and I know they're part of the packet, public,
But what we have is the 4 pages of Exhibit 3, but do you have any other records that you wish to introduce, or do you feel it's sufficient, your joint stipulation that you're...
It's sufficient. The reason, and I'm glad you asked it, the reason I pulled out those 4 pages, because the undercover officers that were inside specifically witnessed partial nudity, full nudity, poles that were set up, women dancing, accepting money for dancing, cannabis being openly smoked and rolled, and they also walked through as though they were patrons, and they testified in the first report about not really properly being patted down for an establishment such as that. That was the reason I pulled those specific reports out.
All right. Is it your belief that, separate from the stipulation, that you have sufficient evidence in the record for each of the 6 violations that are highlighted in the chief's August 7th letter?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
All right. Do you have any other witnesses you wish to present, or any other exhibits?
I do not.
All right. I'm going to open it up now to the commission, who has some questions for you. Hang on a
Before you
second.
close off,
No.
I'm saying, before you close him off, is there anything from staff to add to him?
Yeah, I'm going to go next to him, but I want to first start with questions to Mr. Rossman, then we'll
No,
turn
I'm
to
saying I
city
just don't
managers.
want to close off his presentation if we can't add anything.
Okay,
Or
he's
if we're
special
allowed.
counsel for it, so you've worked with staff?
I have.
You're representing staff in this?
I have. I have spoken to, I'm going to say, about 9 non-officers and about 12 officers in gathering all of these facts together. There are other reports of behavior that is not listed in the chief's notice, and enforcement action is taken after the fact from that. There are a lot of police reports about that. But as to pertaining to what's in the notice, I believe you have the evidence to be supported.
All right, so commission may have questions for Chief Rosa or yourself. I'm going to open it up at this time, and then I'll turn to the licensee to see if they wish to have any questions of staff or Mr. Rossman. Commissioner Douglas.
If we could bring I may go back to Mr. Rotman, but if we could bring the witnesses forward, or whoever among the witnesses.
Yes. Chief Rosa, could you please come to the stand while he's doing that? Mr. Rossman, did you evaluate or identify how many hours you have put in, community development's put in, the city attorney's office has put in, and the police department has put into this matter?
I don't have city hours. I know that I am right now at about 52 hours.
Okay, thank you.
Going back to the last since August the 7th.
All right, you're just a filler till Chief got there. Commissioner Douglas, the floor is yours.
Actually, I was going to, if the witnesses are prepared to step forward. And
Well, we're going to go in order here. We'll first deal with, this is how it's laid out by the city attorney.
I'm taking what's in this. I'm taking the attorney's position as the chief's position for now.
Okay, so we'll have the licensee come up in a minute. So any questions for staff, city staff specifically?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Go back to that.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to go through the process, and we'll come back to the licensee in a minute.
So who is the process? What's the process we're using?
Staff first.
This is what the city attorney's outlined for the agenda, was forwarded to everybody.
Let me ask Mr. Rossman some questions.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Mr. Rossman, you mentioned earlier that it's the entity, Congress, that's responsible. It is a corporation, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you don't presume there are any hidden shareholders anywhere? It's the people who are listed on Sunbiz?
Correct. There's no evidence of that, I will say.
All right. So it appears from on Sunbiz that on 7/23/21 is when ownership changed. I hear the talk about management control versus ownership. Is this management control, or did the ownership change as of 7/20?
On 7/23, I believe Sherry Bowman became vice president. They were still involved. That's my understanding on Sunbiz.
So who was the president? Just so we could go in order, so we all have the same info.
All right. So
You know what I'm saying?
according to
So that-
Sunbiz, president and treasurer was Dong Ho, and Ms. Backman was secretary. Now, the way corporations
And I believe
work,
vice president.
I see secretary here.
Okay.
I'm looking on the Sunbiz filed on July 23 with the Secretary of State. It shows Officer Director Detail, VP, okay, VP Secretary, my apologies.
Is who? Who's that?
Ms. Backman.
Ms.
and
Sherry
then
Bowman.
President and Treasurer Dong Ho. Dong Ho.
But let's go before. Who was the president and vice president before
Mr.
that?
Mr. Ho, or Ho Dong.
I think to Commissioner Scooter's question, prior to that time, it was Sherry Bowman.
So she was president.
Yes. They entered this agreement on July 23rd, and this person who, exhibit number 4, the resignation letter, which establishes that Ho Dong, D-U-O-N-G, was the president, has resigned as president.
But we're going to get to that.
Yes, sir.
But I wanted to know, as of 7/23, apparently, and in the whole corporate world, the president is the person with at least de facto authority to make the decisions, unless we know otherwise. So we start with the president. So what I'm trying to figure out is who had authority between 7/23 and when Ms. Bowman regained control today at 3 p.m. Because it looks like we've been talking to Congress, and they were not in the mix altogether from 7/23.
Until 3 o'clock. Well, they were, to say they're not in the mix, she was vice president
We're working
and
with the
secretary,
corporation.
and that they had an ownership interest.
Because we have a record here, and it may go up. Let's just try not to speak over each other. Just it's an unusual situation here. Go ahead. Commissioner Douglas.
We're trying to focus on clear lines of corporate governance. You know, have we spoken to Mr. Hong at all? I
have not. That's when he was, the Congas, again, until 3 o'clock today, was represented by an attorney until 5 o'clock, 5:15 on Friday. And the attorney was very clear that he, in fact, brought the parties together, that he was previously an attorney, I believe, for this other party, Dong, as I understand it, and brought that person to the Bowmans and put them together.
As far as your determination, was Mr. Bowman?
Mr. Bowman, Frank Bowman?
Mr. Bowman still managing the entity between 7/23 and today?
It's been represented to me by both counsel at the time and Mr. Bowman that he was not.
And did he say when he ceased to stop managing the facility? Because he lists himself just as a manager, not a shareholder, but a manager.
Understood. And I'll be honest with you, I would defer. I think Mr. Bowman can probably best answer those questions. I have had representations have been made to me, and my understanding is they gave up managing control, that there was I believe, an exchange, obviously, like for anything in business, and the other party had managing control, and they did not have control on August the 6th. That's what's been represented to me.
Only what you know, because you had significantly long conversations with them, and maybe not everything is in here.
Correct. And their counsel for about the last 8 days.
The reason this is important is because it appears it's the same counsel that represents Congress that would have appeared with Mr. Bowman.
Correct.
At the meeting with staff post 7/23. So 7/23, Mr. Bowman is now out of the mix. He's not managing this entity anymore. But he's the one who came to meet with staff with that attorney. So I'm trying to clear who was representing who. Was Mr. Bowman representing, was that attorney representing Congress or Mr. Bowman? And what role did Mr. Bowman have on the day that that meeting occurred with staff on
August the 5th.
August
Thursday.
5th, because this is 7, 8, and 5, 13 days after control.
It's my belief that the attorney never represented the Bowmans individually, ever, has never been their lawyer, was not prior, as I understand it, and that he brought the other person, this person, Mr. or Ms. Duong, to them, put them together, and he had previously represented that person at Vegas Cabaret. And that he sat in the meeting on behalf of Congas. I believe Mr. Bowman came to the meeting because the city had concerns, and they knew Mr. Bowman based on his track record and brought him in and said, this is what we're seeing, tell us that's not true. Whether or not he had managing control or not, I was not involved at the time. I can't say whether it was appropriate to meet with him, but I know he made those representations, and the city relied upon them.
So what role was Mr. Bowman playing at the August 5th meeting? A manager trying to hide the fact that he has sold a...
I cannot answer that question.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, I'll save the questions for when Mr. Bowman's perspective.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. I do, procedurally, we've heard you say, and it's part of the stipulation, that they had given away the management of this, and while it can't be a violation under 311A5 because it wasn't in the chief's letter, do you believe that that's a defense, affirmative defense or otherwise, to the allegation and to the issue that you say for which you have substantial compliance?
I do not, and in fact, there's 2 paragraphs in the stipulation that say that, where they acknowledge, as owners, presently sitting before you, they're accepting responsibility for the previous person, though they did not, and I'll let them explain it better, they did not have the control, they did not bring those things forward. They're accepting responsibility because they have now taken back Congas. Okay. So Congas is the licensee, the action is against.
So while 311A5 is not a violation, can the failure to meet that be undermine any defense that's being raised here by suggesting that they didn't have control?
I mean,
aren't they introducing that issue into this?
They are not. They are not. They made an admission in speaking to me that I recognized was a separate violation, okay, and may be relevant in the revocation. So I thought it was important to include it in the stipulation that they agree to it, though it is not noticed to them by the chief.
Right. Is it a defense to any of the 6 enumerated, that is, that they didn't have control?
It is not, because again, the action is against the licensee, which is Congress. It is not against them as individuals, and it's not against Mr. Dong as an individual.
Do you believe it has any relevance in this proceeding, other than perhaps on remedy? Substantively, does it have any relevance as to whether or not they gave control away?
I would say, I think if I were a fact finder, I guess that's what I hear in my relevance, that it's important to them that you understand where they're coming from and how this came about. And I did consider it and thought it was relevant enough to put in the stipulation that they were trying, or from the August 7th forward, they have been trying to wrest control of Conga's back.
Leaving that aside, the question I think is bifurcated. Is it relevant that they say that they didn't have control on the date that this happened?
No.
Is it relevant in any way?
It is not relevant to the chief's emergency suspension at all. No.
It may be relevant to remedy. It may be relevant to what the commission ultimately does and whether continuing it or otherwise. But subsequently, I want to be very clear on this record. While it's contained in the stipulation, you as counsel for the city, do you believe it has any relevance, and is it a defense to the substantive violations that are outlined in the August 7th letter, the 6 violations that are enumerated?
It is not, and if it was, they waived that in the paragraphs where they accept full responsibility. They recognize it's their responsibility, so that has specifically been waived. Okay. But it is not irrelevant. It is not a defense because Congas, however it existed, committed these violations, and that's what the action was taken against.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rossman. On the chief's letter, Exhibit 1, those 6. Allegations. The first one, failing to properly search for weapons and firearms prior to entry into the establishment. I see in the Exhibit 3, the police reports indicate that they conducted a light pat-down.
That is correct, according to the undercover officers. But the undercover officer came to the conclusion it was not sufficient, that they could have easily snuck weapons in if they decided to.
All right, so that would be competent, substantial evidence to support that particular allegation, correct?
Yes.
Okay, with respect to the second allegation, allowed open and obvious legal narcotics use inside and outside the premises. Again, reading the police reports, the undercover detectives smelled cannabis throughout and actually saw people rolling marijuana cigarettes in the establishment. Is that what you would consider competent and substantial evidence to support that allegation?
Yes, particularly since they used the term openly rolling. It was obvious to everybody in the club, including the undercover officers.
Okay, and that was also, those reports were also sworn under oath, correct?
Yes.
On these that were in. And then number 3, illegally operated adult entertainment establishment or regular use within a B3 zoning district. Again, in Exhibit 3, the police reports indicates that there were 50 women walking around partially and fully naked, removing clothing for money. Is that what you're relying on to establish competent, substantial evidence to support that allegation?
It is.
Okay. Going to the next one, illegally allowed patrons to expose themselves and urinate in public. I'm assuming the exposure part I can read from Exhibit 3, but I don't see anywhere in the stipulation or any of the materials about urination in public. Is that something the chief can testify to?
It's not something the chief would testify to, but again, and this is probably more on me than anything else. I want to find the paragraph in the stipulation. They have stipulated to all of the police reports and the city staff reports, and I believe those were provided. I saw them and I received them as attachments A through, I believe, M, and I believed that they would be part of this record, separate from specific exhibits that I was introducing today. I could be mistaken. If that's the case, then I would want the other police reports marked as Exhibit 6 and entered, and I don't imagine there's going to be any opposition to that.
Would your stipulation, paragraph 11, apply to that, on the joint stipulation?
Police American constitute extended hours license. Paragraph 11 is, paragraph 10 is the one that I was looking for. I'm sorry. They take no exception to the factual allegations, and they're admitting those. So they're saying if the chief said it, it happened. That directly applies. But Congress agrees to city staff reports and sworn police reports related to the events as stated in the chief's emergency suspension, and agrees they may be considered. That's what says that the chief saying it, that there is substantial competent evidence for it. Yes.
Okay, so we can check that off as there being substantial competent evidence in the record to support that particular allegation.
Yes.
And as you can guess where I'm going on the next one.
Yeah,
I didn't see anything with food trucks or special event permit.
That's city staff, and certainly if you want, I can call. There was also Lieutenant Cardinale, who is out sick, who was there and personally observed that, but he wrote a police report, and there's a city staff report about that. In fact, that was incorporated by that stipulation in paragraph 10.
And that would cover that particular allegation, paragraph 10 and paragraph 11 of the joint stipulation?
Yes, sir.
And with respect to the last one on parking and travel areas for unpermitted valet and paid parking, same thing?
Same exact. Lieutenant Cardinale saw it himself, wrote a report about it, authored a report, sworn report, as did a city staff report.
Vegas Cabaret, what is Vegas Cabaret?
Well, I will tell you, I've never been there, but I did see the Instagram and the social media stuff from it, and it appeared to be an adult entertainment nightclub where there is full nudity and alcohol served.
I didn't want to put you on the road and say
no,
that you were there, just for the public.
I just have to stay. I have no personal knowledge of it, so.
Thank you, Mayor. Those are my questions for the staff.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Assistant Deputy Mayor, any questions?
No questions for staff, thank you.
Commissioner Scudo, any questions? And then I'll come back to Commissioner Douglas.
It just seems from when you made your first presentation to us, it just seems like everything was like a shell game. It just seems everything that Congress has done seems to be like they had a business, they managed the business, it's under his wife's name, it's under someone else's name. Then they change a name, then they fire the lawyer, they hire the lawyer, they didn't know they hired the lawyer. They meet with staff the day before they're going to open. The day before they're going to open.
Yes, sir.
And the city tells them, we see this coming. We see this coming. They say, no, this is not coming. They know they're partners with a business that just got let go from another city. They knew what they were getting. They knew what they were getting. They sat with staff. We gave them every option. We sat with police, fire, city, attorney, police, everyone. Whether the gentleman says that he's a manager, the owner, when he filled out to get $25,000 from the city, obviously he was the owner or the manager or whatever. That was all well and good.
I don't know what
No, I'm
that was
saying,
or-
now we get to this point, it just seems like it's a big shell game. She just became the owner today. He was the owner. He was the one who was handling everything. Frank was on everything. Regardless of whether he was the owner or not, Frank ran everything from what we hear and what we get and what we have. Now he seems to be like nowhere. And now these other people are everywhere. They already known when they filled out for a special exemption. He's already had this license for years, operating, whether it was him, whether it was his wife, his kid, I don't know who it is. okay? Now it just seems like everything, in a matter of so much time, everything has changed. But he specifically knew, or she specifically knew, before this even came about, that once you relinquish control, that is the breaker right there. Regardless, I know that it's not in the chief's thing. But that's the breaker for anyone, not just for them. It's for anyone who fills out for this. You know, that is just lying, and it's a specific. To me, I understand that you were only allowed to talk to them on Saturday and Sunday. But this lawyer who was ever representing them represented Vegas Cabaret before, represented Eden.
I don't know anything about Eden, but he did tell me
because they're the same owner.
Okay.
It's the same owners. Okay, so they were in Davie at Eden, then they became here at Vegas Cabaret, and now they wanted to go to Congress. So it's like a big, to me, I'm saying it's like a big shell game that we're stuck in the middle of now, where we seen it coming, he saw it coming, he just didn't want to agree to it or admit to it, and now it happened. And now everybody wants to do, and I said this from the beginning, it's all going to happen down this way. It's going to be a big shell game, and it's going to be, I fired the manager, I fired the cook, I fired this one, I fired that one, and now I'm all back easy. Now I'm back to normal. That doesn't go, you know what I'm saying? We gave them all, we gave them all this time. And I'm just saying, now we're going to sit here and have to listen to you for an hour and a half, give you your presentation. You already did 52 hours. All of us had to go through this for 20, 30, 40 hours, and now we're going to have people come to make a presentation to us with a big sob story and a big shell game. I just think, you know, some of these things, we've been this route before. You know, sometimes it's very cut and dry. You know, I'm not here to start dragging stuff out and feeling sorry for people that broke the law and anything.
And Commissioner, I'm not, just so I can say, I'm not asking you to feel sorry for them. I presented the revocation of the tow truck driver years ago.
One at a time, Council.
I'm not questioning you. I'm not going against you in any way. I'm just saying, this is just me. He's a lawyer. He's a lawyer. He's a lawyer. They understand the technicality and different things. I don't. I'm a lay person. I'm just like very cut and dry, and I want to get to the facts. Okay? They could be technical because they know the right things to ask. Maybe I don't. I could just see it as black and white, where it was going, and now where we are. I mean, it's pretty much a cut and dry. But when you were dealing with them over the weekend, and you said they were asking you, and I could just imagine how many questions they must have been asking you, but you're not representing them. You're representing the city or the police chief. And it's not fair that they have the opportunity to ask you, which I couldn't even imagine how many questions they must ask you, to try to make you answer. And, you know, they chose to go this route. They chose not to have representation, but not to use our lawyer that's representing us to ask all these questions on what they should not be able to do.
But so that you understand, if I may interject on that point, from October 3rd of 94 to September 30th of 14, I was a prosecutor here in Broward County. So, and I've dealt with pro se defendants before. Though I am the city's lawyer, I still have an obligation as an attorney in good faith to listen to their side. And though they ask questions, I want to make it clear, I did not give them any legal advice. I explained over and over again, I am the city's lawyer, I am an adversary to you, I cannot give you legal advice. You may be asking intelligent questions. You need to answer those for yourself. I did answer questions about what the process was, as far as what I knew about the process, what a stipulation is, because as a lawyer, I'm dealing with an unrepresented person, and I want to make sure that I'm not taking advantage of that person. So I had to make sure that they understood what was happening. So never did I give them any legal advice. They asked many intelligent questions, most of which I could not answer for them, about process and things and what the limits of my authority was. I did answer those, and that was it. And I don't think any of your questions are mistaken. I just don't think I can answer them. I think those are intelligent questions to be asked directly of Mr. Bowman, and he will either answer them or he will not.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Scudo. Commissioner Douglas, to staff.
One other follow-up, because and my colleague actually touched on it a while ago. One, the license is not transferable, but irrespective of the machinations that are going on, this corporation change ends, at least as far as the primary party, the president.
That's why I use the term controlling interest or managing control.
Yeah. So I don't consider it management control. The corporation changed hands. So
Well, Ms. Bowman still had an interest in it, as far as all the evidence that I have. You can ask them that directly about whether they lost, but she's listed on Sunbiz as both the vice president and I believe it's the secretary. So I cannot say that they never had an interest. Well, I just don't have any evidence of that.
So much an interest, but I think once you transfer the majority of the shares, which by implication you hand over the presidency, more than likely you've handed over majority interest in the business.
I'll be honest, my experience with small businesses, there's really no shares. I mean, they're supposed to be, but I think that informally, but I understand what you're saying, but that's why I use the term managing control, because that's what was represented.
This process that we're engaging in, the back and the forth, because if you can transfer it one way, you can't transfer it back the other way, you know. So the question is, have we had any sort of verification as to what was the shareholding at the time of the transfer and what's the current shareholding now? Because it looks like that would be important to me in even questioning who is the correct party here. Who is the correct party?
It was important to me, and it hampered my ability to do my job because I needed to be assured that they were authorized representatives of Congress. They assured me over the weekend that they were finishing that process with another party that, according to them, was out of town, and that they had to legally do a contract with to get back that control. They represented me that was all going to happen today, so I drew up the stipulation last night in the morning. And once it was verified, once they sent those exhibits, and I knew they could actually sign, that's when I sent the joint stipulation.
Which by implication is they gave up control. Because
Agreed.
If you had to be haggling with somebody versus just kicking them off the corporation, which I see happen all the time.
I agree 100%, which is why, in speaking to the attorney all along, he used that term, that they were not in control, the other party was in control. So that is why I use that term, that the other person had control. Again, to the mayor's point, there are 2 paragraphs in here that say they do not, that's not a defense. They understand what happened, and they now have control of Congress, and they stand before you responsible for everything that happened at Congress.
Let me ask you one other question. In terms of stipulations, I hear that these are stipulations of fact. He said he wasn't there that day. He said he didn't have management control. How can he stipulate the facts that he wasn't even, I mean, these are supposed to be facts. The chief is saying, you failed to search weapons. He wasn't there. You failed to search the weapon. He's stipulating to it as a fact. Oh, I agree. Allowed, open, and obvious, I stipulate it's a fact. I thought factual stipulations were to be made by people who actually had knowledge of the fact, not I'm adopting what some third party said. I mean,
that's an intelligent question. So the answer to that is, 1, we're dealing with an entity that cannot speak for itself. So it must be an authorized representative of the entity. Congress is entering the stipulation. They're the authorized representatives. I will tell you, from August 7th, that Saturday morning, Mr. Bowman claims, and you'll hear from him directly, I guess, and that's the best way to get it, that he became aware of all of these allegations, that he has worked for years with Lieutenant Cardinale in particular, majors, and a lot of officers. They've had details there, and they all made him aware of all the allegations. He has seen police reports that I've shared. He has talked to his counsel. So he has knowledge. It's not that he was there to observe it all, but that he has knowledge of those things and takes no issue with any of the facts that Sunrise employees, sworn or otherwise, have brought forward.
all right, so if Congress, the entity, is the one responsible, therefore we shouldn't discount what council did between that date and Friday. We should still, because it was, they represent the corporation.
Yes, sir, and that's who he had represented to me, that he had authority to do so, and that's why I spoke to him for a good 8 days in this process.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Mayor, I have a follow-up question.
Board staff.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Scudo, the floor is yours.
On Thursday, the meeting before they opened up,
August 5th, yes, sir.
do you have in your presence everyone from city staff that was at that meeting?
Not everyone. I know the community development director is here, and assistant city attorney is out, I'm told, on leave. There's...
Chief, were you there? Shannon, were you there?
That was, I believe it was Lieutenant Cardinale.
Wait. Before we
Could I ask Shannon?
Yeah, wait one
Okay.
second, though. Let's have some order here, because we're at the, I don't want to have questions being asked.
Well, I was
Hang on
thinking
one
we could
second.
answer, right.
If she's going to answer any questions, she has to be
Just be
sworn.
That's
So
why
I want to
was
go one
asking
step at a time.
staff before I was getting sworn in.
Okay, so the chief was asked a question, he answered from his table, he was not there. Ms. Lay is here. Were there any other individuals either there, listening in, or physically present who are here either on the phone? I see Lieutenant Cardinelli's on the phone. Was he there at the meeting?
He was, representing.
Was there anyone else that you're aware of?
Mr. Moss was at the meeting, and he is available on the phone now.
Okay. Anyone else that you know of that's available on the phone or here present?
I don't believe so. There was
Okay.
a representative from Fire, but I don't believe they're here.
All right, so Commissioner Scudo's asked for one of those witnesses, if not all of them, to come forward and be sworn for the purposes of outlining that August 5th meeting. Do you have any objection to that?
I do not.
Okay. Ms., who do you wish to call?
Ms. Lay is here. It'd be easiest to ask her first.
Okay, if you would, come to the podium. Ms. Bravo's going to state your name.
Could I just ask a question before she does get sworn?
No.
Before she gets sworn in, I don't want to, I want to ask the city attorney something first.
Oh, yeah, city attorney, not Shannon Lay. Yeah.
No. Before you get sworn in, to the city attorney. If I'm going to ask her a question right now, who's going to be able to represent her? Is
Mr. Rossman.
Mr. Rossman can represent her?
Mr. Rossman is representing staff in the prosecution of this matter.
So even if I call Mr. Cardinale or Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, of course.
Is it okay that I ask her a question?
Yes.
Yeah, it's in your authority for sure, Commissioner Scudo, but let's go one step at a time. State your name and your employment, and then Ms. Bravo will have you sworn.
Shannon Lay, City of Sunrise Community Development Director.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right.
Thank you.
Ms. Lay, Mr. Rossman or Commissioner Scudo, however you wish to handle it.
Would you like me to ask some preliminary questions? Or do you want to just ask the questions directly?
Go ahead.
I defer to you, Commissioner Scudo.
No, go ahead and ask.
Ms. Lay, were you present at a meeting on August 5th, Thursday, in your role for the City of Sunrise as a Community Development Director that involved the opening or reopening of a Conga's nightclub?
I was.
Okay, and just make sure you're close to the microphone.
I was.
Can you please identify the other participants in the meeting? If you need to rely upon something, absolutely.
You have to state everything on the record, Ms. Lay.
Yes, I am looking at an electronic scan of a sign-in sheet, and it says Conga's Nightclub, 8521. My name, first, Shannon Lay. My phone number, City of Sunrise. Craig Cardinelli, Susie Mouth.
Hang on, you're reading from a document. You've not admitted that document. Do you have any objection to Ms. Lay reading from this document? Mr. Bowman saying no. Ms. Bowman, no objection. Okay, go ahead and continue.
Sorry about that.
And you don't need to give phone numbers per se, but please identify for the commissioners the people that were all present at that meeting.
Shannon Lay, Craig Cardinelli, Susie Malkin, Kimberly Sibner, Megan Caffold, Daniel Aronson, Frank Bowman, Tom Moss.
So having laid that, Commissioner, I'll turn it over to you. You know, now that you know all the players that were there, and you're going to know some of the roles better than I am. Quite honestly, I know the officers and the firefighters and the city attorney, but I'll turn that over to you to question Ms. Lay.
Ms. Lay, did everyone speak, or was it only their lawyer spoke and Mr. Moss, our lawyer, spoke, or was it like a round table like discussion?
I don't think every person in the room spoke. There was a lot of conversation. I did a lot of the speaking. Craig Cardinelli did a lot of speaking. Both representatives from Conga's, Frank and the attorney, spoke.
So Frank, a managing person, not the president or whatever, he was speaking for Conga's. Is that what you said?
He spoke at the meeting.
And who else spoke for Conga's at the meeting?
Mr. Aronson.
So if you normally would go to a meeting where you're trying to operate a business, obviously you would have some type of authority to be discussing if it's only the lawyer and you. How come the president wouldn't have been there? I'm not saying to you, I'm just thinking in my head. Why wouldn't the president of this new company be there? Because he's the new controlling interest as you said, this is the new control, the lawyer said to you, the Bowmans are not the controlling interest. This new person is the controlling interest. He's the president.
Yes, when the lawyer represented that to me, it was after the fact, because I was involved after the fact, but yes, that is what he said.
But at the meeting, that's what I was trying to say. The corporation at the meeting, who was the president of the company at that time?
You know, Ms. Lake?
Do you know what I'm saying?
Do you personally know who was?
I did see documentation that the president on Sunbiz changed. According.
Well, it changed today, it changed last week. I'm just trying to find out, as a layperson, as a commissioner, he had the authority to speak at the meeting to open up his business on Friday. You guys called a meeting, you sat with the gentleman and his lawyer and our staff. He was the spokesperson for the business congas and represented by his lawyer. So obviously, he had some type of authority, or the president or whoever gave him the authority to go to the meeting. That's all I'm trying to say. Who gave him the authority at the meeting?
My colleague is allowing me to jump on his time.
Yes,
Hang on.
No, I will.
You're done? Yeah,
Yes.
no, I'm just going to go in order. Commissioner Douglas, others may as well. So,
Right,
yeah.
Commissioner Douglas.
I think you mentioned something about having asked if there was a transfer of the business. Was that correct? Did you specifically ask Mr. Bowman if there was any transfer of the business, or?
I do not recall asking that.
Did you, on that day, have any reason to believe there was a transfer of ownership? Did anybody represent that to you?
Nobody represented that there was a transfer of ownership.
At the time you were having the discussion with Mr. Bowman, even if you don't remember all the details of the discussion, did you get the sense that he didn't know anything about the planned event that was going to happen? The
Can you repeat
matter
that
that
again?
raised concerns for you guys, the reason he was brought there in the first place.
He had knowledge of the event.
And what was the nature of the discussion? What it is that staff told him that we were aware of?
We were aware of advertising that was posted that basically was representing that the establishment from Lauderhill was moving into congas. And as we do with any of these nightclubs, it's our standard protocol that we'll call them in and express our concerns and go over what our expectations are, what licenses you have, what authority it gives you, what you can and cannot do, as well as some of the city code and the land development code regarding uses. So we basically laid that out. I gave him a copy of the 2 advertisements that I had seen at the time, as well as a copy of his special exception and a copy of his extended hours license. And that I spoke to the city code of ordinances about adult entertainment and regulated uses, but I did not give them a copy of it because the attorney was well aware and even quoted some of it back to me, so I didn't feel it was relevant.
Was there a denial that there was any plans at all to have an adult-type activity at the club in the days to come?
Can you refer?
What was the assurances given to staff, or were there any denials that your suspicions about the nature of the activities were incorrect?
They represented that my nature, that I thought that the advertisements that I saw were purely marketing, and it was referring to entertainers, not entertainment. That was explicitly said to me by the attorney, because there was the word entertainers in it. And he said it's not entertainment. They do understand what adult entertainment is by the city code, and he assured that will not be happening. It's more of a hip-hop club.
Did you get that assurance from Mr. Bowman himself?
Yes, I did.
Okay, may I ask a question that may also clarify? Ms. Lay, how did this meeting come about? In other words, who invited whom, and how did everybody know to gather?
I was the one who reached out as to Frank himself as the representative that we have dealt with. We are the establishment that does the extended hours and also code compliances within my division.
I understand.
Speak into the mic just a little closer for us, okay?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So if I understand what you're saying is Mr. Bowman was there because you specifically reached out to him and invited him as the person you dealt with previously with congas.
Yes, sir.
Counsel, let's back up a little bit. Help us to understand. You came across some advertisements, you said, correct?
Yes.
What were
Yes,
the
sir.
advertisements specifically?
Can I get them?
Sure.
Do you remember them as you sit here? You don't have to show them to me, but do you remember what they were about approximately?
Yes, there was one that had somebody holding up like grand opening or something. I don't remember if exactly grand opening, but like tickets, right?
Okay.
Of an event kind of thing. And there was some wording below. I can't tell you exactly because there's other ones I saw after the fact what it said, but there was language that led that there's going to be a grand opening. Actually, I do specifically recall that it mentioned, I think it was 12 noon, and that sticks out because their special exception had a limitation that conflicted with that I wanted to make them aware of. And then there was another one with 2 women that did not have what appeared in what I saw did not appear to be fully clothed. One woman I specifically remember had her arms across her breast area, and it did not appear that she had clothes on because I did point that out to them, and they said it was just pure.
Okay, we'll get to the discussion, but I'm trying to understand, this is what alerted you.
Yes.
In paragraph 17 of the stipulation, it indicates that you became, or staff became concerned about Vegas Cabaret. Where did that come from?
That was in the advertisements.
All right, the words Vegas Cabaret were in the advertisement.
I would like to see them just to make sure, but I believe they were in there.
I can answer that, yes.
Yeah.
I can answer that for the commission, yes.
So when you saw that, let me understand the process. How long before the 5th was it that you saw that, became concerned, and wanted to conduct a meeting?
I believe I reached out to him, I believe, on Tuesday. I was made aware of it, I think, the week before. I had a day off somewhere in there. I was made aware, I think, and I reached out to him on Tuesday because I was trying to have the meeting on Wednesday.
And it was ultimately, you held the meeting on Thursday. You asked Frank to come. Did he indicate at the time that you invited him that he was bringing a lawyer?
He didn't, the first contact, no. At the end, I do not recall if he might have. I do not recall, though. But when
Do
my
you
first
remember that
contact
conversation where he talked to you about whether he's bringing a lawyer, or did he just show up with a lawyer?
I don't recall.
All right. At the meeting, was there a discussion about Vegas Cabaret?
Yes, sir.
Was there a discussion about adult entertainment?
Yes, sir.
Was there a discussion about whether that was permitted in any which way?
Yes, sir.
What was that discussion?
That discussion was, it appeared that this is what these advertisements was alluding to, and that this is not something that is that they have, the zoning code does not allow it in this district, so they couldn't even get it if they wanted it.
All right. Did he indicate at that time, Mr. Bowman or the lawyer, that they had somehow transferred control or management to an outside group that was running this event?
No, sir.
Was there any question from Mr. Bowman as to whether or not he needed to apply for any special permits?
No, sir.
Did you indicate whether or not he would be able to conduct the event as had been advertised?
In my perception of the advertisement?
Yes.
Actually, no, I indicated that he could not open at noon.
Okay. Was there any issue about whether he could hold the event in the evening if he didn't open at noon?
The event with regards to just having a grand opening? No.
No problem with the grand opening, right?
Right.
Adult entertainment.
No, he could not have adult entertainment.
Was there any doubt about that?
It was very clear. I think I was very clear.
When you told him and showed him the social media advertisements, was he shocked?
No.
I mean, we saw the word mortified. Was he mortified that something like that would even happen?
I did not get that impression.
Did he say, Shannon, let's recess this meeting. I need to go investigate this. I don't know what's going on here.
It was, and I want to just make sure I'm answering the right. You're saying with regards to what I was showing him in the advertisements?
Yeah, exactly.
Was he shocked about the advertisements? Yeah. No.
Did he say, I hadn't seen this before?
I do not recall.
You had indicated that you were led to believe that he was aware of this. What led you to believe? What about his conduct, his affect, what he said, how he expressed himself? What led you to believe that he was not shocked by this and was aware of it?
That they were just marketing. It's just marketing. Because I made a comment that, the woman, it appeared that she didn't have anything on if she took her arms down. And I said, I can't say that, or the words are across her pelvic area. I actually said that to them, and they said, well, it's just marketing and you don't know. And I said, well, I'm just telling you my perception of it. And they said, it's just marketing, it's just images.
Did you take that as a denial that they had no intent of putting on any adult entertainment? It was just marketing?
I didn't take it that way, but that's what was stated.
Okay, did you believe him? Did you believe that it was just marketing?
No,
Okay. Did you talk to Lieutenant Cardinale afterwards?
yes,
All right. Was there a plan put in place to observe what was going to happen at this event?
yes,
Was that in part because you did not believe that they were going to avoid this adult entertainment event and that there was going to be violations?
yes.
Okay. Did Mr. Bowman, after you made the presentation, did he suggest to you that he would have to go back and talk to anybody to make sure that this didn't happen?
With regards to the time, right? Because like I said, it was advertised for them to open earlier than their special exception for the nightclub allowed. That stipulated 5 p.m. So that conversation was discussed, that they would have to make sure that they knew that. And they would not open before 5 p.m.
Well, he understood that, but did he make it sound like he could not even answer your questions to whether this would go on or not? Did he say,
No,
listen, I've got to go talk to my bosses, I got to go talk to who's in control of this?
No, it made it very clear that it was not going to happen. They assured that they were operating as a nightclub, more like a hip-hop bar, and a change of, the style, because they were Latin before. It was more of a change of the style of nightclub.
Was there any discussion at that time regarding the conditions of his extended hours that included that they could not relinquish control of the operation or the management of the establishment to any promoters or any other third parties?
No, there was no discussion.
What did he say to you, but I've got a promoter or a third party who's going to do this, is that okay?
There was no discussion.
Okay. Were you, at that time, were you even on alert that that was even a possibility, or did you just believe that Frank was in control?
I believe that Frank was in control.
Okay. I'm sorry, I let both of you go. That's cool, but could I ask Mr. Morse or Mr. Cardinale?
Hold on, let's go one at a time. You want to ask them, that's fine. Are we done with this witness?
Yeah, I just want to now make sure.
The only reason I ask that is I have to give them the right to be able to ask questions of the witness before the witness is excused. And then we can see if Mr. Moss or Mr. Cardinale is available.
I just want to ask if Mr. Cardinale and Mr. Moss agree with Shannon Stain. I want to make sure that.
We have to put them on oath, though. We have to put them on oath.
No,
we have to go through the process.
You have to get a chance to question the witness.
Yeah, so you can't ask them yet.
But we didn't finish the whole process before.
No,
we're gonna
we'll take all day. That's not the issue.
No, I don't care about that. The gentleman spoke, the chief spoke, she spoke. Now I want Tom to speak, or Cardinale to speak, then they could go.
No, that's not the way it works. They have a right to question this witness. Then they have a right
They didn't
to do a
get to
presentation.
question the chief. Oh, no, I'm just asking.
I understand, but I have to do this now. Just trust me, Joey, please.
No, I'm not saying that.
Just trust me. If we're done with Ms. Lay, any other questions of Ms. Lay?
Thank you, Ms. Lay. Thank you for giving your testimony here today.
Don't go anywhere.
Mr. Mayor, I have one question, if I may. You stated that I believe it was in the meeting from our conversations, that you had been on Sunbiz prior to the meeting or in the meeting and noticed that there had been a change. Do I have that wrong?
No, I didn't know whether it was me or my staff alerted me. Probably both. I'm doing a lot of things at one time, but I was aware, yes.
In the meeting on August 5th, you were aware on Sunbiz there had been a change in the president?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all, Your Honor.
Thank you. Now to you all. Do you have any questions of Ms. Lay? Mr. Bowman, no. Ms. Bowman? Declining. All right, you are excused. We had a request for Mr. Moss and Lieutenant Cardinale. I see both are on the phone. Which order would you like, Commissioner Scott?
Whoever wants to go.
Okay, go ahead and press 5-star, Mr. Moss and Lieutenant Cardinale, and as soon as you're ready, I see, Mr. Moss, your phone is unmuted. Are you there, Mr. Moss?
Yes, Mayor, I'm here.
All right. First, before we go anywhere on this, you are not here live, so I have to do a couple of things. Mr. Moss is upstairs. Do you wish to have him come down here before he provides any testimony?
Whatever is convenient. Mayor, I'm actually at home.
What's that?
I'm actually at home, Mayor. I'm out of the office.
Shh, I was trying to save you, Mr. Moss. Do you have any objection to him testifying virtually, that is, by phone? No objection for Mr. Bowman. Ms. Bowman? Do you have any objection to him being sworn remotely? That is, being sworn, he's known to the city clerk and to the commission. Do you have any objection to him being sworn remotely? No objection from either. Okay.
Your Honor, I can also authenticate his voice from hearing as well. I've known Mr. Moss over 20 years.
I think the commission can as well. Ms. Brown, if you would, go ahead and swear Mr. Moss.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Thank you, Mr. Moss. Commissioner Scudo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moss. I'm just trying to follow up on some of the questions that I just asked Ms. Shannon Lay, who is the Director for Planning and Development. Did you attend the meeting on that Thursday that had Lieutenant Cardinale, Shannon Lay, supposedly yourself, Frank, the lawyer, Ms. Sibner, and a couple of other key city employees? Were you at that meeting?
Yes, I was.
Were you just able to hear the testimony of Ms. Lay?
Yes, I heard Ms. Lay.
To your recollect, you being at the meeting, do you remember if Frank, the owner of Congas, or the manager of Congas, or the vice president, or whatever his title is, did you feel that he was the representative for Congas at that time at the meeting?
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
So the only people that were there that day representing Congas was Frank and their lawyer?
That's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to see if you agreed with Ms. Lay that you were there, and to see that if the two representatives from Congas were Frank and his lawyer.
Yes, sir, I do agree.
Okay, thank you. Those are the only two questions that I had.
Thank you, Commissioner Scudo. Commissioner Douglas.
Mr. Moss, as staff was aware of on that day, what was Congas nightclub? What was the nature of that club?
As staff was aware, it was operating as a nightclub.
Is there a genre? Is there a manner in which this is operated?
I'm probably not as familiar with the history of Congas as staff and police would be, so I'm not myself certain of that.
It's anecdotally known as a Latin dance club. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I have heard that.
So based on, and probably I should have asked Mr. Lay, but since you're in the room, there was some indication that this was quote-unquote advertising. Was it advertising? Were staff being led to believe that the nature of the club was going to continue and these were just people who were going to provide some sort of entertainment on a single night?
Well, to elaborate a little bit on what Ms. Lay stated, as I recall the meeting, Frank indicated that the advertising, which showed the adult entertainment use, was a marketing ploy to generate new business, and that they intentionally were advertising the club as having strippers and or adult entertainment as what he called a marketing ploy.
So they were going to have a new type of dance, like pole dancing or something like that, or is just a bait and switch type deal?
Well, it was actually, Frank actually admitted that it was a marketing scheme and that the only people that would be upset would be the customers when they showed up because in actuality there would not be strippers or adult entertainment.
Ah, okay. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Assistant Deputy Mayor.
Can we see the actual advertisement? We're talking, that's what started it, but can we see it?
Yes, we can. We'll have Mr. Rossman get that, but do you have any questions for Mr. Moss?
That's it.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Moss? Okay, to the licensees, Mr. Bowman, do you have any questions of Mr. Moss?
Do I need to go up there? Or?
If you're going to ask questions, come to the podium.
I just wanted to correct the record.
Do you have a question for, you'll have time to make a presentation. Do you have a question for Mr. Moss?
Yes, Mr. Moss, the statement that you last made was said by not me, but by the attorney with regards to customers coming in and being duped by not seeing strippers because we intentionally are advertising for them to come for that purpose. I don't know if you recall that, but
Mr. Moss?
That's my recollection.
Yeah, so, well, my recollection is that statement or similar statements were made by you, and Mr. Aronson, I'm sure was in agreement, but my recollection is that you took responsibility for that advertisement and characterized it as a marketing ploy.
Okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Moss? Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Any further questions for Mr. Moss? Commissioner Douglas.
Would you have any admissions or statement made by the attorney, would you have considered those to be representative of the organization's position, Mr. Moss?
Yes, I would have, especially under those circumstances where Frank and Mr. Erickson were sitting right next to each other, and they were constantly throughout the meeting, adopting each other's statements, and they certainly never disagreed with each other. They were in full agreement with. Yeah.
So then the notion that it was the attorney that said it and not Mr. It was said on behalf of the corporation.
It was, and it was actually they actually tried, yes, it was made on behalf of the corporation. I think they tried to make light of it by laughing it off, but it was definitely made on behalf of Tonga's, and both Frank and the attorney adopted that representation.
Mr. Moss, were you aware on that day that the ownership had changed or that anything on Sunbiz had been amended?
I don't recall. I do recall. I don't recall the timing. I do recall there was a time where the holder of the alcohol license from Vegas Cabaret became an officer of the Congress Corporation, but I don't remember the timing. I don't remember if that was before or after the meeting that I attended.
Mm-hmm. So no discussion was had as to the implications of some additional shareholder being added to the corporation at that time?
To my recollection, that never came up at our meeting with Frank and his attorney.
Did you get the impression, Mr. Moss, in that meeting that Frank was not the manager of the entity at that time?
No, just the opposite. It was very clear that he was in charge or in control of the nightclub, whether, regardless of what his title may have been. It was obvious that he was in control and speaking for the Congress nightclub.
How do you reconcile that there's this advertising that Vegas Cafe is coming? Cabaret, I'm sorry. And we know that Congo's is the corporation that controls that entity. Was there no discussion at all as to how the relationship between Vegas Cabaret and Congo's have come about?
I don't recall that being discussed at the meeting. The meeting was more the meeting was more of an attempt for the city staff to make clear to Congress what the city expected, and for Congress to attempt to reassure the city that there would be no violation.
I heard this thing about grand opening. Was it the impression that the doors of the business were closed, or that the business was not operational prior to that date?
I was not aware of that. It did not appear that way to me, but I was not aware of that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Moss, did Mr. Bowman express any shock when the issue of adult entertainment and the advertising was raised with him?
No, no.
Was he outraged or mortified?
No, he was not.
Was he embarrassed by that? We see in the stipulation that he indicates he's embarrassed by the violations. Did he express on August 5th to you or staff that he was embarrassed by the advertising that seemed to be suggesting there was going to be adult entertainment there?
No, and again, he described that as his marketing ploy.
Was it absolutely clear, in your opinion, at the conclusion of that meeting, that there should be no adult entertainment at Conga's, and if there was, that would be a violation?
Yes, that was made absolutely crystal clear.
And was it also made clear from Mr. Bowman that he understood the warning of the city?
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Bowman and his attorney made it absolutely clear that they understood.
What representations did they make to staff and to you in that meeting after these concerns were raised by staff regarding adult entertainment and any potential violations?
Well, they made it very clear that they understood the city's code. They understood the prohibition on Conga's operating as an adult entertainment business, that they understood the prohibition in the city code against an adult entertainment business serving alcohol, and they understood the hours of operation, and that there would be absolutely no violations of any of those city codes.
Any doubt?
Or violations of...
Any doubt in your mind about that?
Doubt.
Any doubt in your mind about that?
No, no doubt.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rossman, do you have any questions?
Of Mr. Moss,
Yes.
I do not.
Okay. Again, I'll open it back because there were some more questions. Mr. and Ms. Bowman, do you have any more questions for Mr. Moss? No. All right, I'm going to excuse him as a witness, okay? Mr. Moss, thank you. You're excused. Do you wish to hear from Lieutenant Cardinelli?
Yes. Just so, for the record, to make sure that we all understand that, did they all hear the same thing and they all agree?
If Commissioner Scudo has asked to call...
We're going to
Okay.
be here all day?
I can represent to you, though I'm not sworn, that in my meetings with Lieutenant Cardinelli, he is going to say similar, he will parrot what Ms. Lay said. That's what he has parroted to me, what Ms. Lay has said before.
That being said, my
clear.
colleague has the right. If he wishes to have the witness called, we'll do that.
No, I mean, if everybody feels comfortable then okay. Then I don't need to call Mr. Clark.
Mr. Cardinelli, Lieutenant Cardinelli, please stay on the phone nonetheless. You're not being called at this time. All right, any other questions of Mr. Rossman on his presentation? I think you, Assistant Deputy Mayor, wanted to know about the advertising.
Yes, I'm having, and this was some of the confusion on my part. I received a bunch of attachments from Ms. Lay that I thought were part of the record. They're part of the revocation notice, so I thought these were things you had seen, and I apologize, that's on me. Copies are being made now of the two social media posts that she saw and had in the meeting on August 5th and shared with everybody and said were the nature of her concern. Somebody has just gone to make 12 copies of those, so we should have those very shortly.
All right, we'll allow you to reopen for the purposes of introducing that, but for purposes of time, let's move on. If no further questions.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I would ask Mr. Bowman, Ms. Bowman, you have no objection to those becoming exhibit number 6, correct?
Well, wait till they're here. I want to make sure they see them first.
Okay.
I don't want anything. We'll deal with that. I'm sure that won't be a problem. I'll allow you to reopen on that.
Thank you.
Mr. and Ms. Bowman, you have now the right to ask any questions of Mr. Rossman and or any of the witnesses that were asked. I'll reopen it for you. Do you wish to ask any questions at this time? None, sir. Okay. At this time, I'm going to accept into the record all of the evidence that has been brought forward and incorporated from the files. At this time, the presentation will be turned over to the licensee. You may approach the podium. You may put on your, state your name again and address for the record your role. You're welcome to call any witnesses and present any evidence that you wish to offer regarding the emergency suspension of your extended hours license. What I'd like to do is just deal substantively first, and then I understand that you want to address the remedy, but for the outset, I want to know, do you have any witnesses that you wish to call in defense of the suspension? No. Mr. Bowman says no. Ms. Bowman? No witnesses. All right. Do you wish to testify in defense of the suspension that has been put forward by the chief on August 7th?
Not a defense, no.
Okay. Ms. Bowman? Okay, both have said no. Mr. Rossman, do you have any questions of the licensee regarding any defense to the suspension?
I would want to establish a couple of facts. Ms. Bowman?
All right, hang on. Ms. Bowman, you'll need to come to the podium, and I'd remind you you're still under oath. Mr. Rossman, the floor is yours.
Ms. Bowman, presently and previously, were you the controlling interest, the president?
Yes, I was.
What was your husband, Frank Bowman's role, and what is it?
He was a manager. I became ill, and he's...
You have to speak in the microphone, ma'am.
Yeah.
I apologize. I know you're not feeling well, so I'm not trying to make you scream loud, but the microphone's really good. If you just speak a little closer.
I was, right today, I am the president. I became ill, and my husband took, well, he just took charge, because I wasn't in no position to run the club.
The next question I have for you is has he been acting as an authorized representative of you and Congas in his conversations with me?
Yes.
And you have been a part of those conversations. You have not spoken, other than to tell me you were there, but you were party to all of those conversations that led to the stipulations, correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay, thank you.
All right, does anyone from the commission have any questions of Ms. Baumann?
I'm not going to ambush them if they don't want to testify.
Yeah,
but,
I understand. I just want to know if you have questions. I understand. I share your sentiment. Anyone? Commissioner? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Baumann. You may have a seat. Do you have any other evidence or exhibits that you wish to offer into evidence in defense of the suspension? Mr. Baumann? No, sir. Ms. Baumann? Yes, well, I'll give you that opportunity in a second. Ms. Baumann?
No.
Okay, go ahead and have a seat. At this time, I'll open it up it is a public hearing, so if there's anyone wish to speak on the issue of suspension and the continued suspension of the license and the propriety of what the chief did on August 7th, please press 5* on your phone at this time or raise your hand in the hall. Tori, I see no hands raised. Can you confirm?
I confirm, Mayor. I don't see any hands raised.
All right, and there's no one in the hall, so I'll go ahead and close public hearing on that. At this time, I'll turn now, Mr. Rossman, to you, and because we're bifurcating this a little bit on the issue of the suspension and the substantive issues, I'll turn to you on the remedy. If you can outline for us the position of the city in that, and then I'll turn it to Mr. and Mrs. Baumann.
Well, if I may, Your Honor, I think Mr. Bowman is hung up on the word defense because he says he does not want to put any defense. I know he does want to address the commission with what he thinks are relevant facts. So prior to closing maybe what we would otherwise call the evidentiary portion, I'm not sure he fully understands. So when you say you want to put up any defense, he says no, but I know he has some prepared things he wants you to know prior to closing the evidentiary part.
Okay, so
here's the problem.
Just so he knows, if he speaks, we're going to question.
Let me as the chair. If he's going to testify, that's fine. There will be a cross-examination. So that's fair. I
think he understands that, but so I just would ask, Mr. Bowman, you want to address the commission, correct?
Yes. Mr. Bowman, please come to the podium, please.
So he's still the
I remind you that you're still under oath.
Oh, God.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Bowman, the floor is yours.
Okay. I think a few things that I might say here may clarify a lot of the questions and concerns that the commission has. I apologize to you folks that we've come to meet under these circumstances. I want to just give a little summary of our life in Sunrise. We acquired...
Let me just stop you. I want to let you go uninterrupted. Mr. Rossman's offered these exhibits. Are these the two advertisements?
They are, Your Honor.
Are you going to mark these as Exhibit 6? Composite Exhibit 6, is that right?
Yes.
All right.
You have 2 pages, Your Honor.
2 pages. Mr. Baumann, do you have a copy of it? And do you agree that those were the exhibits that were offered to you during the August 5th meeting?
Yeah, with Ms. Lay, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I just want to get that out of the way. Any objection to the admission of these for the purposes of this hearing?
No, sir.
All right, we'll accept into evidence Exhibit 6. Sorry, Mr. Baumann, the floor is yours again. I apologize.
Okay. We acquired Conga's nightclub in 2017. We bought it, when I say we, it's my wife and I. We bought it from the previous owners. It was a Latin club for maybe 15 years to that date. We continued. We came before the city and the commission for the extended hours license. I remember a few of the commissioners here were present back then. You folks granted the extended hours license to Sherry, and we continued the business. We actually continued the corporation. We bought the corporation from the previous owners. I have my own business that I do consulting. In 2019, my wife ended up with a second bout of cancer. Prior to that, she was there for most of the time with the operation of the business. I assisted her. When she was diagnosed the second time around, I wound up having to take mostly full control and take care of her and the business with the support of the staff. Throughout those years, from the time we came before you and we became the owners of the nightclub, we had a very stellar relationship, I would say, with the police department and city for as many people as we've interacted with regards to the extended hours license year over year. It's a little difficult going through the situation with my wife, and it stretched us quite thin. We struggled with the operation of the business, and then subsequent to her situation, just as she was recovering, COVID hit. When COVID hit, I don't think that we need to go into the details of how it affected us, tremendously. I was in touch at that time with some members of the city to see what kind of support there might be out there, and we were able to get some assistance from you folks and from the SBA system until we reopened again. We were closed for several months because of the executive order. After we reopened, business was slow. We started developing again, and we got to the point where we discovered that Sherry has to go back for surgery pretty soon. Decisions were difficult. We were at the point of maybe walking away from the business. And then we were approached by these folks through a common party, which is the attorney that is being mentioned here, Danny Aronson, who happens to be also a friend and attorney that we've used in the past. So he essentially brought us together. We gave that thought that, should we allow this to happen? It was a very difficult decision, and, my wife was quite opposed to it, but we didn't think we had too many options out there, and I thought maybe it'll give me more time to dedicate to her. So we went ahead with this, and the situation was we allowed them, they were closing over there, we allowed them to come in and operate what we essentially thought was a hip-hop club. I'm not denying that we didn't know what their business was over there, but it was clear in our discussions with them that we don't want to be a part of what was happening over at that location. We were okay with bringing the clientele, managing it effectively, not having any sort of adult entertainment because we were not zoned for that. We knew that we're not zoned for that. And maybe we made a little light of it when we looked at these. I don't have social media. It was brought to my attention at the meeting. And, we looked at it and thought, yes, maybe it's a way to get the people to come over. The first night it opened, everything went awry. I was notified the next day by Chief Rosa that the license would be suspended, the extended hours license, and immediately I got on the phone with the parties that we got involved with and told them they need to cease any type of this activity. From there on, we started the process of figuring out how to remove these folks from, because it was our business essentially, to remove these folks from the operation, barring losing the business. And so, to date, Danny Aronson was representing because he's the one that brought us together. We felt to the end that it wasn't benefiting us, his representation. We have no intentions of denying any of this because when one of Chief Rose's men say something happened, we accept. We have a great relationship with most of the people that I know in the police force. So we're here to appeal to you, to ask you to give us a chance, give some consideration. We've failed. We're embarrassed. The attorney said that it didn't seem like I was embarrassed or mortified, but prior to it happening, I didn't think it would, and when it did, that feeling came over us. So we're asking you to give us an opportunity to continue the business. The Latin business is back. We've taken the business back and we started operating back to the Latin. And just to clarify some of the things that maybe some of the commissioners had, Sherry was always the president of the entity until the 23rd. The city was always interacting with me because of her health situation. So when this situation came up, I assumed that it's just natural that they would be in touch with me when Shannon reached out to me and anybody from the city, police department. So I represented her interest in the business. If the commission decides that they cannot give us relief, we are in a situation where we'll be out of business. The doors are going to be closed if we cannot open any other weekend, because with the Latin clientele, it's a Friday and Saturday business. We depend on every penny that comes in to make the ends meet, and if there's no consideration from the commission, we're out of business. The doors will be closed, and I wanted to clearly say that, not to bring out any sympathy from you folks, but just to give you the reality. And it was a little bit of desperation that maybe led us towards getting involved with these folks with her health situation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bowman. There may be some questions for you. I do have a couple questions for you. If you could turn to the Exhibit 6 that was just marked, and if you could turn to the second page. We've already established that these were shown to you by Ms. Lay and her team at that August 5th meeting, correct?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity to look at it? Were you given copies of those?
Yeah, I think she gave me copies, yes.
All right. Does this look like the copies that were given to you on that day?
Looks like it, yes.
All right, so page 2.
Yes.
It has Vegas Cabaret. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
All right. What was Vegas Cabaret? Did you know what that was?
An adult urban club.
Okay, where?
In Lauderhill.
Did you come to learn that they had ceased to exist in Lauderhill?
Yes, that's how we come to an agreement, because they were closing over there and they needed a place to go.
Why were they closing over there?
I don't know the details behind that.
When they reached out to you, they needed a place to go. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
They wanted to continue the same business model?
Maybe that was their intention, but it wasn't ours.
Well, let's see if that's the case. So on August 5th, you were given this sheet of paper, Vegas Cabaret. This is social media, correct, of some sort?
Yes.
All right. It reads, the first sentence, don't miss out our grand opening at our new venue in 2 weeks. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Did I read that accurately?
Yes, sir.
All right. Was that the first time you had seen any announcement by Vegas Cabaret that you were going to be their new location?
Yes, sir. Well, this is the first time I saw this ad.
What? But did you know that they were announcing that you were going to be their new location?
This is when I realized that they're putting advertising out there saying Vegas Cabaret is moving to Congas.
But did they tell you that that's what they were doing? That is, that they realized that you were going to be their new venue?
No.
So when you saw you were going to be the new venue, thank you, Chief. When you saw that you were going to be their new venue, did you speak to the representatives of Vegas Cabaret or Mr. Aronson to ask them what they meant by that?
Yes, we had discussions and we asked them to cease. I mean, these were management employees that came over with the partners that we brought in.
Wait. Before you said cease, but I want to know, on August 5th,
yes,
were you aware that you were going to be their new venue, Vegas Cabaret's new venue?
Well, I wouldn't want to say Vegas Cabaret venue. We were not changing anything. It's Congas. It was Congas nightclub.
Okay. Did they tell you they were going to hold an event on the 6th?
It wasn't an event. It was that the club was going to move in the direction of urban hip-hop and not Latin anymore.
All right. Well, let's go on to see. It says free drinks and free entry 6 to 10. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Right. And there's some sort of emoji. There's what might be a bottle of champagne and a wrap of money. See that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yes?
Oh, I do, yes.
Okay. Then it says, quote, same staff, same entertainers, and many new girls, too, end quote. Did I read that right?
Yes, you did.
All right. What do they mean by same entertainers at Vegas Cabaret?
You want to know something here? As you were reading it, now I'm really reading it. When I was given this, I looked at the pictures. That was what I was paying attention to. So if you were asking me to interpret, they're essentially saying they're bringing on the same business that they have.
Bringing their strippers to your place.
Potentially, yes.
Potentially, it's their stated.
Well, that's what they're saying, yes.
Okay. So when you were handed this in the meeting, were you shocked or mortified or embarrassed that they were bringing strippers to your location, knowing that staff had just told you adult entertainment was not allowed?
I was concerned, but I didn't think that it would occur because we've had meetings before to discuss the type of operation that we're going to have over at Congress when they come over.
When you say you mean meetings, you mean meetings with the representatives of Vegas Cabaret?
The folks that we took in, yes.
Okay. Who is that?
Down.
Okay. Anyone else?
That was who was on the end today, yes.
Okay. How about Mr. Aronson? Did you talk with him as to what the intent was of Vegas Cabaret?
Did we talk to Mr. Aronson about
what the intent of Mr. Dong was regarding?
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
And that's why he was at the meeting with me to clarify that there is no intent to allow adult entertainment.
When they handed you the copy of this, was it the same size that we're looking at right now?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, it wasn't like so minuscule you couldn't read it?
No, I didn't pay much attention to it. I mean, most of what I was paying attention to was, what was being discussed at the meeting.
Uh-huh.
And
How long was the meeting?
I don't know, maybe an hour, 45 minutes, an hour.
So in the hour and 45 minutes, you did not read the sentence, same staff, same entertainers, and many new girls too. You didn't see that?
I didn't pay attention.
Didn't pay
quite
attention.
Honestly.
But staff was telling you, we're concerned. Vegas Cabaret is a strip club. They're saying they're coming. Staff had read the document. They're telling you what they're seeing coming. Did you get on the phone and call Mr. Dong and tell him, you can't do this?
We left that meeting, Mr. Aronson and I left that meeting and went and had a subsequent meeting with the folks and explained to them exactly what transpired, that we just came from the city of Sunrise, we had a meeting, they're concerned about what you guys are advertising, please stop this, this is not going to happen, if this happens, we're done.
All right, so
everybody acknowledge that.
Page 1 of this, okay?
Yes.
Again, Congress Broward, it says, is that your social media? Congress Broward?
No.
Okay, what is Congress Broward?
I have no idea.
Okay. It says Friday, August 6th, grand opening. See that?
Yes.
And there are some girls in the background. Do you see that?
Yes.
All right. Miss Lay had indicated that she thought that one of them perhaps was not wearing a top. Do you see that?
Yes.
Would you agree with her assessment that that would appear?
Yes.
Okay. And it goes down, it says, join us at the new venue. Do you see that? Did I read that right?
Yes.
Same staff. Did I read that correctly?
I don't know, down below?
Okay. Join us at the new venue. See that right after grand opening, right below it.
Oh, okay. I need my glasses, yes.
Okay. Same staff.
Same staff, yes.
See that?
Yes.
And then it says same dancers. See that?
Yes.
Same dancers from Vegas Cabaret. Again, pretty clear that they were intending at this new venue to bring over their strippers from Lauderhill. Yes?
It would appear so, yes. I apologize. I'm not reading it as you're reading it with me. I mean, I'm serious. I looked at it. I didn't read it specifically. I was concerned about it, and I told them, please stop this type of advertising.
Okay. Advertising, that's great. You were still managing. You were still part of that. Did you go there on Friday and open the doors up for them?
No, I did not.
You weren't there at Friday night at all?
No.
Who'd you give the keys to?
The managers.
Sorry?
The managers.
What managers?
There was a few managers that came over, the staff from Vegas Cabaret.
Okay.
And the partner.
So you went, when did you give them the keys?
Earlier in the week, maybe a week or two prior to this August 6th.
So let me ask you this then.
July 23rd, when we brought in this new partner, is when we started sharing keys and stuff like that.
All right. So now you'd seen this on the bed. You were warned by staff. They said, this looks like, you didn't read this. You didn't think it was worthwhile to read. Staff said, I'm warning you, no adult entertainment. Did you think for a second that because staff has warned you and you could lose your extended license, that maybe you should go over on Friday to see what this event is all about?
I was there Thursday, I was there Friday, but not at night because I'm home with Cherry. So I put confidence in other people.
Well, when you went there Friday, did you see, have you always had poles for people to dance on?
No.
Did they add poles?
Yes.
Did you see that on Friday when you went there?
Yes, sir.
Did you say to yourself, guys, I thought we talked about this, no adult entertainment, what are these poles here?
We discussed it, and there wasn't anything illegal about dancing on a pole, so it's pole dancing, not nudity.
Is that what they told you? They're
Yes.
coming from Vegas Cabaret, they're bringing the same entertainers, the same dancers, they're installing the poles, and somebody said to you, don't worry, there's not going to be any nudity.
And that's why we attended the meeting on Thursday with staff to, we wouldn't come out there and commit to that if we didn't feel a level of confidence. They failed us.
All right, so
And we
Mr. Aronson was there. He's
Yes.
counsel. Did he, to your knowledge, express to Mr. Dong that this was a problem? You can't have any nudity.
Absolutely.
All right?
100%.
Do you have cameras
Yes, sir.
at the establishment?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to see those remotely?
No.
Are you able to plug in just to see what's going on at the place?
You have to go in at the location and pull it up.
You can't do that?
I didn't have access remotely, no.
Okay. When was it that you first learned that there were strippers at your venue?
Saturday morning, I received an email from Chief Rosa about the suspension, and that's when I discovered everything that happened. I think it was about 11 o'clock or 11:30 in the morning.
And did you speak to Mr. Dong?
Yes, immediately.
What'd he tell you?
It's a horror, but yes, they weren't there either, and it happened, and they said we need to sit down and talk. I've got this notice from the chief, and our license is suspended, and you have to cease from this type of activity.
All right, that's all the questions I have. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just, you want to go? You can go.
No, I'm not going to beat up. I'm not going to beat up on him. I heard it. But I just want to ask you one thing. This meeting happened on the 5th. The event happened on the 6th. You spoke of desperation you had.
Yes,
I
sir.
presume, I'm not going to ask you to disclose, I presume you were taking some money from them at that point.
I mean, I prefer not to discuss the terms if it's okay.
Okay, but did you feel like you could stop it at that point? Like when you learned on Friday and this is happening, you learned Thursday and this is happening Friday, did you?
Yes, sir.
Did you feel like you had the power? Because you're not the beneficial owner, because she is, but you had already probably gone into a deal with the devil. You took
Yes.
money, whatever. You didn't feel like you could back up by Friday.
I'll repeat your words. It was a deal with the devil. And we started working on trying to regain our place back.
Well, I'll say this to you. Typically, I'd be tough on you. I've heard your story. You've thrown yourself at the mercy of the commission, and I understand.
Appreciate it.
And that is not me prejudging my judgment on it, but I don't feel like I can pound you any further into the ground after hearing that. So I'll pass it on to.
All right. Assistant Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I just, to your wife, I'm sorry what you're going through, and I know this is difficult for you to sit here. I'm not a business owner, and I'm not an attorney, but personally, I have common sense to know that I'm going to hand over keys to a business that I'm 100% responsible for, knowing my reputation that it's good with the city for X amount of years, and to not do a background or to find out why they left Lauderhill. I mean, anyone who knows the area knows the shootings, the police records, the stabbings. I mean, there's a number. Anyone can pull that up. And the list goes on. So to know that came into our city, you seem like very good people. I've never met you before, and I'm sorry that you guys are in this position. But you put yourself in it, and it's going to cost. This is how far we've gotten. I don't know what's going to happen at the end of this discussion, but I mean, yeah, you made a really bad deal. So I'm sorry.
I appreciate your comments, Commissioner. I feel I was caught between my wife's health and business, and it was a bad decision. And, if it costs us the business, that's where I end up. I'd rather have taken care of her.
Deputy Mayor, anything?
Comments?
Just, no, not comments.
For question?
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to beat them up. No.
Okay. Commissioner Scudo, any questions?
Yeah, I just want to ask you, how do you know Mr. Aronson?
Our kids grew up together.
So you know him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you knew what type of lawyer he was?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you know who he represented?
Sort of, yeah.
So he pretty much was telling you, hey, I got a deal for you. I can make you make some money. This is what it's going to entail. And you went along with it, knowing the reputation that you had in the city, but you blew it. You took a chance, you took a gamble, and you lost. I feel sorry for what you're going through, but people make choices. You just happen to make the wrong one. And you put your family in a bad situation. Those people were in a good situation because they would have made money doing what they do illegally. They must have paid you a good amount of money to get on there, but now you had to give it back. Well, yeah, because it was a bad decision. It's kind of like when people buy a house or people buy property contingent upon what they could put on the property. So here's you giving your keys to someone, knowing exactly what you were getting into. You know, and I feel bad in one way that, you know what? You could have been that change right there on Thursday. But you decided not to because money makes the blind see sometimes. And you put yourself in a spot that you couldn't get out of at that point because they knew they had a lawyer that was going to help them fight the whole way through. Because he's the same lawyer who helped them in other cities do the same exact thing. And if you knew him, you knew exactly who he was and what he was about. So, I'm sorry, I can't, you know, do anything but what is right. And that would be like revoking your license. And I will vote tonight to revoke your license. Because not only did we give you the benefit of the doubt to meet with us, we explained it to you, we went over it with you for an hour and 45 minutes. But because your lawyer does what he does, and he's probably on the night tonight, I'm sure he's listening to this whole entire meeting. And I'm sorry, but I just can't feel sorry for you as a business person. You made a decision, not even to show up the night of a grand opening. Your wife is still the vice president of the company. You didn't even show up to the grand opening of your new business that was going to put you and your family back on track again. It was going to put your family back on track again. You said that it slowed down, you went through Corona, you got $25,000 from the city, you said the business was going to start to come back, and then you went into bed with these people. You hurt yourself. You had every opportunity to get out of it. The city warned you for an hour and 45 minutes. You chose not to.
Hour/45.
Right.
Not hour
Okay.
45.
So I just feel that, you know, you have every right to come here. You filled out for the application to come before us. You said what it is that you said, but you know what? It just doesn't make me feel comfortable knowing what you know was going to happen did happen, and then we had to be the bearer of all what happened on that night. If that happened on the first night, just imagine what could happen every night from that. So I personally will vote to revoke your license.
It stopped that first night, Commissioner. We made every effort to cure whatever these issues were. It was one time we've ever had any issues with the city, and I apologize. You said I didn't go out to the opening. I needed to be home with my wife, and I apologize. I understand your position.
I accept your excuse. I don't accept it. I vote to revoke your license.
Okay.
So just as a matter of procedure, tonight is only about whether to continue the suspension of Chief Rosa's emergency suspension. If there's a vote, it will be for a period of time until revocation can be considered. So this will not be the last hearing for that. With respect to, and I know I was hard on you in my questioning, because I actually have spent a lot of time, you and I have communicated through COVID. We've taken the time to try to commiserate and try to figure out what could be done differently. You never had a problem emailing me. You had good ideas. We had the same frustrations about the state and federal programs. You know that the city did what it could, and you never had a problem. I'm personally disappointed.
I apologize.
And I've said it to the chief, that I'm like, I can't believe Frank just did this without emailing me. And it's not like you didn't know how to do it at all hours, and we would exchange, and there's lots of it, and I enjoyed our encounters. I'm just personally disappointed. It's separate and apart from whatever the standards are here, but I wanted you to know that, Frank.
I apologize, and the landlord representatives in the room, and rent's due, $21,000 a month. You know, there was a program that the SBA came out with that we applied for and got approved, and in 30 minutes they exhausted $28 billion in May. That was a lifeline that we hoped we would have gotten. We never got it. We waited. May turned to June, turned to July, turned to where we're at today.
I mean, but they told you on that Thursday what was going to happen. This was predictable. I mean, you must have walked out of there. I don't know what you thought would happen, that somehow you get saved, but they were telling you what they saw, and they did their job, and I'm proud of them for at least giving you the opportunity to get out of it. Do you recognize the amount of time that staff in multiple departments have put into this, that your decision for that Friday night, what it has cost the taxpayers of the city of Sunrise in enforcement, in investigation, in staff meetings, in hiring of outside counsel?
Yes, sir. And unfortunately, you know, like I said, we brought people in who were sort of dictating the operation and decisions that we pursue, so.
I understand.
But I take responsibility. Yes.
All right. Do you have anything else?
We can stop the pounding now. Is this before us for revocation tonight?
No,
or
it's not.
just
It's not. Hang on. All right, so do you have anything else that you wish to present?
Just that, so that if it's suspended, we're out of business.
I understand.
We won't last another week.
I feel for you, Frank. Do we have anyone in the public who wishes to speak? I'll reopen to the public hearing on this at this time. If you do, press 5-star on your phone or raise your hand in the hall. Tori, I see no hands raised. Can you confirm?
I confirm, Mayor. I see no hands raised.
All right, and there's no hands raised in the hall to speak. I'll close public comments at this time. Is there anything else that city staff would like to add to this?
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Is there anything else, Frank or Ms. Bowman, you would like to add to this?
My intention is not to deceive anybody. I'm an honest, straightforward person. Black is black, white is white for me. I just hope you accept what we're saying, and it's the truth, and that's all I have to say. I'm sorry, I am embarrassed. I've said it already.
Yes, Ms. Bowman, I can imagine this has been difficult at home as well for you too.
It's not worth it.
All right, hang on. We have also the landlords here. Have you spoken with the landlord about?
The landlord is aware of everything. They're copied on all the correspondence.
Yeah. How's your relationship with the landlord been up until this point?
Excellent. Excellent. He helped us out through COVID. He's been pretty kind to us. Business is business. Rent's due, rent's due. You know, he gave us some concessions, and then to the latter part, over the last few months, you know, everything's back to normal. Not last few months, this year. Since we opened back up, everything's back to normal. So we're struggling.
All right. Let me do this. He's raised his hand. I'm going to reopen the public hearing, and then I'll turn it back to my colleagues who may want to make some comments or ask some more questions. You may approach the podium. You have the right to be sworn in. I first need your name and address and your relationship with respect to this matter.
My name is Yuda Stell. I do not wish to be sworn in. I don't swear.
All right, and your relationship to the Bowmans?
I'm the property manager for the property that he rents.
Okay, when you say property manager, what do you mean?
The local property manager, I facilitate everything in the common areas. I see Frank a lot.
Okay.
I see all my tenants a lot. I just came up to say a comment that from my personal relationship with Frank, he is he's always seemed to be a very straight arrow, him and his wife, and that's all I wanted to say. I think that he's a very good person, and I think that his intentions probably weren't there at the time, but I think that he deserves mercy.
When you met with Mr. Bowman after this happened, how would you describe his demeanor in this regard? Was he remorseful? Was he candid with you?
He was very remorseful, and I haven't seen Frank. I know the differences between his personalities. I do see him often, and I do know him, and I did see the difference in his demeanor and in the way that he spoke to us he was more ashamed. And it wasn't only to me, it was to an associate of mine that is on the phone. I do know him as a very true to himself person. So yeah, I just wanted to come up and say that for him, he's been an outstanding tenant. He's an outstanding tenant. He helps out everyone. He abides to all the rules. If there's any problems in general with his Latin nights, Friday and Saturdays, he never leaves a mess. He never, he's very respectful to us, to the property, to the landlord, to anyone who works with our company, works with the company. And I just came up because I have seen that he's been literally pushed to the ground, and I really do feel that he deserves mercy. I just wanted to come up and say that.
I appreciate that. Could you spell your last name for me just one more time?
Stell.
From your perspective, do you have any concerns if he was to remain open and operate the Latin Club?
I actually, after I heard what happened, I made it my priority after the Sabbath came out to stop by last week and just in general to keep an eye out on things. I don't personally think that there would be a concern if we know 100% that whatever was in the past stays in the past, and it's not really my choice to call. There are people above me. I'm just here representing them. But in my point of view, I would consult with them saying that I don't think there should be a concern if the ties are broken completely with whatever was. And I'm sure that anyone would agree with me.
That's a fair point. Any questions for Mr. Steele? Thank you, sir. I appreciate you coming forward. That was an honorable thing to do, so thank you for doing that.
But it's not part of the testimony or anything because...
Well, you can give it whatever weight you wish,
Right, okay,
pursuant
whatever.
to any way that you wish. That's the way the public comments work.
Thank you.
Are there any more comments from the public before I close the public hearing? One more time, press
There's
5.
somebody with their hand raised?
5-star.
There's somebody with their hand raised, Mayor.
Okay, it's not showing up on my screen, so go ahead, release it.
Caller, last four digits 4500.
My name is Glenn. Good evening. My name is Glenn Whittam. I am counsel for the landlord. I want to make clear.
Hang on,
that
Mr. Rowe. Hang
gentleman
on, counsel. 1 second, just because we have to follow a process here. One more time, state your name.
My name is Glenn Whittam. I'm legal counsel for the landlord.
Okay.
I want to
Hang on
make
1
a
second.
point that
Hang on, Mr. Whittam, hang on. As a result of this process, there are two options for anyone speaking before us from the public. You can be sworn or unsworn. I need to provide you that option. Do you wish to be sworn remotely? And we'll get a concession from counsel for the city, and I'm sure Mr. Bowman as well, as to whether you can be sworn or you can offer your comments unsworn.
My comments are as an attorney. I'm unsworn. I'm counsel for the landlord. The gentleman who just spoke gave his private, personal comments. The landlord does not have a position or intended to participate other than listening in on the commission's actions with regard to the events that are detailed in the violations. So I want to just make sure that the commission is aware that the gentleman who just spoke was not communicating the position of the landlord.
Are you communicating any position on behalf of the landlord, Mr. Whittam?
The landlord's position is we will follow the whatever the commission and city determines with regard to what's on the agenda this evening. We don't have any position.
All right, thank you. Hang on, Mr. Whittam. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Whittam, either Mr. Bowman or the city?
No, Your Honor.
No questions from the city council? Any questions from Mr. and Mrs. Bowman? No? Any questions from the commission for Mr. Whittam? Thank you, Mr. Whittam. Any other comments from the public? Press 5-star on your phone at this time. There's no one else in the hall to speak. I see no other hands raised. Can you confirm, Tori?
I confirm. I see no other hands raised.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring this item back now to the commission for discussion. So I'll turn it now. I'll try to put it in the order. I think Assistant Deputy Mayor Light was on first, then Deputy Mayor, and then Commissioner Douglas.
I just wanted to briefly share with the owners that I actually grew up going to congas in my 20s. I'm going to be 40 this year, so it's sad to know what's going on. It's sad to know that you guys may need to close if, depending on what the decision is. But I will say in my past, from going there many times, there was never a problem. I always enjoyed my time. I felt safe when I was in there. But again, this is going years back, not recent. But I just really wanted you to understand that I know the club. I'm Hispanic. I've enjoyed it. And I will be sad to know if it's closed.
Thank you, Assistant Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. April 25th, 2017, you guys were here before us, and we granted you this special extended license, and I recall this is a privilege. You remember? Thank God nobody died that night. AK-47 or AK whatever it was, those rounds go through buildings and walls, and I'm just very happy that we're here dealing with this issue and not the other issue. I find you all credible. I believe what you say. I believe Chief Rosa is credible. I find Shannon Lay credible. I find Tom Moss credible. I find you all credible. I have no reason to doubt any of you. But at the end of the day, we're looking at a decision based on these 6 factors that you have entered into a joint stipulation. And the evidence, so there is competent, substantial evidence to sustain the suspension. I'm moved by the mitigating factors you've done, but I'm also disturbed about the aggravating factor, specifically the Thursday, August 5th meeting. I'm willing to hear my colleagues out. I don't know which way I'm going to go, but I do find that there is competent, substantial evidence to uphold the chief's suspension. I'm not aware of any prior history issues since you've had it since 2017. Obviously, that goes a long way. You've done everything you can to separate from Ms. Duong. You put it back in your name. You've cooperated. You haven't put up a defense. I do believe you're remorseful. You say you're an innocent owner, but maybe you had your kind of head in the sand, wishing something would happen. And I think the deal the devil was there. I don't think you're a bad person. I don't think either one of you are. With respect to the meeting, I do believe, based on what I saw and the exhibits that were Exhibit 6, you knew this was coming. If you didn't do your due diligence on Vegas Cabaret. So it's cost 52 hours of Mr. Rossman's time before today, so we're up to 57 on that. Mayor has touched on the enormous expense that we're going to be paying for this. If you get another opportunity, this can't continue. But I don't know if you're going to be opening this weekend. I don't know if it's here or not. I mean, if the suspension is put in place and we uphold it, your revocation isn't here until the 14th. So I don't know what we can do on if we're going to go that route or not. I feel some sort of punishment is warranted, but I also don't feel the need to give you the death blow either. So I'll listen to the rest of my colleagues in making my decision on whether the aggravated or mitigating circumstances will control where I go with that. But I do find you credible. I feel sorry for where you at. I know the COVID has destroyed us all. So I just want to let you know where I sit, and that it's not a disbelief thing. And no matter what happens, I think you're good people, and I wish you success either continuing in Sunrise or in the next endeavor if the commission chooses to go that way. Okay?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Commissioner Douglas.
So I'm never known for letting people down easy. I don't think so. And before I came to this meeting, I had very strong feelings about the actions that occurred out here. Closing you down won't recover all of the money that we have spent here today or letting you stay open. I mean, it is what it is. But those who have power sometimes have to temper that power with grace. Desperation causes a lot of things. It causes us to be blind to things that are very clear to us. It's like what we call sweet lies. The types you doubt, but you got to believe it. You just got to believe it. Sweet lies. I've been to that venue before. I wouldn't say I'm a frequent visitor, but I've gone there a couple of times. There are a couple of Latin clubs in Broward County, some in Hollywood. This is probably the only one in this area. The Hollywood one is a younger crowd. This one is more my old folk crowd, the ones who can barely dance. It's not a pickup spot. So, but I've gone there, and I understand the club has existed in some form or another in our community for over a decade, not under your... I recall being on the commission when you guys came here. And yes, everything that was said, I recall being said. And usually when I hear these revocations taking place, it's kind of a build-up, multiple infractions and so on and so forth that build on each other. You bought it as a going concern and continued as a going concern. And you know, it would be a shame if it closes, and because it serves a segment of our community. I mean, our population is significantly ente Latinas, and it provides an outlet for those people who like that genre of music. What occurred, obviously, was a significant event. If I were to cross-examine you, I could shoot holes into all of this, but I'm not going to go there. I'm focusing on the issue of whether I believe you yourself or your wife or the previous management of Congress would have continued this kind of action or pursued this kind of action. In my attending the venue, I've never noticed anything. Nobody trying to pad my bill, nobody trying to be, you know, just none of the unsavory things that one would encounter in an establishment. So you know, if it is as a finder of fact, I as a lawyer, I think they had ascribed this to one of our founding fathers when they say, if the facts are against you, pound on the jury. Abe Lincoln. As the jury and the finder of fact, I've asked juries to pardon my clients before because the facts were just against them. The law was against them. I just said, look, I beg your pardon. I don't want to provide a death sentence for your business. I've listened to you, and matter of fact, before you took the podium, I was ready to nail you. But I understand what desperation does. You wanted to hold on to something. You didn't have time to manage it. You thought they were doing hip-hop. These are borderline. And I understand what's written there. And I'll tell you, read the fine print. But I understand, too, that in that moment, a day before this event, you came here and this is all coming at you and you're like, how do I not give them back that 30 grand? Or how do I hope that what they're telling me is not so? And you have an attorney representing them and you think he's representing you and he's actually acting in their best interest and not yours. And anyway, if it is, and again, this is the will of the commission, I'm prepared to find some way to save the business on some sort of a probationary type thing, some way. I don't know that I want to put the knife in the kidney. So I don't know if there's anything else that could be added to that.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. You wish to go, Commissioner Scudo?
Yes. So I've been this route before. And it's not like we're giving up on you. I say you gave up on us. And I say that for the reason that you knew your club wasn't doing good, and you decided to sell it. That's what you chose to do. So I know we want to say we want to keep a Latin club in Sunrise or whatever reason. You're the one who had the club. You're the one seeing it go down, and now you want it out because you said you had another business and because you sold it and you got a good amount of money. So I'm not feeling sorry for you that whatever happened, happened. You wanted out and you wanted to leave. The fact that you know Mr. Aronson, your neighbors, your kids played ball together, you knew exactly who he was, you knew exactly what his business is, you knew exactly what Vegas Cabaret was, you knew exactly what they did, and you knew exactly what they were going to do at your place. So that's why I say you knew everything from the beginning. Whether you were on the business or not, you ran the business, okay? We had companies that did the same thing to us years ago. We had a company called Hibiscus that came before us. It was the husband's business, but it wasn't under his name. The whole thing. He wanted to bring up that he was a veteran, brought that whole that he was a Marine, and every single thing that he wanted to bring up. The fact was, he relinquished his business to someone else the same way you did. And you should be held accountable the same way these people have been. We had people with pill mills who wasn't under their name. It was under their wife's name. They used an 80-year-old pharmacist to do whatever it is that they did in our city, and they gave 55,000 oxycodons a week out of our city and had 2 locations. So, yeah, at a time, you know what? The city needs to cut their losses, okay? I'm sorry for whatever happened to you. If you didn't know what was happening, that's a different story. You knew exactly who you were dealing with. You knew exactly what you were going to do. You even told your wife, and you said your wife was against it. Okay? You said that in your testimony. So you know what? You chose something, because obviously to this day, you're not even an officer of the company, but yet you're representing the company. So I'm just telling you, you made all these decisions. You knew exactly what you wanted to do, okay? But you made the wrong decision. And now you're putting it on us that we have to feel sorry for you, that you're going to go out of business. But you already chose to sell your business. You were selling your business. You sold it. You were out, okay? Because if you were still in the business, you would have been there that Friday night for your grand opening of your new business. So this was your way out. This was their way to keep you on the license so you could keep the 4 o'clock. And this is where I don't like to be used, okay, and then have to now feel sorry for decisions that you ultimately made. And I'm sad, you know what I'm saying? But then don't put me on this spot. You're putting me on a spot right now, one of 5 people, to try to now feel sorry for somebody that knew the decisions that they were making were wrong. And then the city even tried to help you, to tell you you're making the wrong decision, and then you still did it. So you know what? You made the wrong decision. But now why do I have to feel sorry for you to now to allow your business to open again? And who's to say something else is not going to happen again? I don't want that on my head. I don't want that on my head. I did that with other businesses, and it backfired on us and made us look bad, and I'm not doing that. I don't want to look bad. It has nothing about Latin. It has nothing about what the lawyer wrote in there about a black club or a hip-hop club or whatever. I'm not going there, okay? That's not what this is about. This is about an individual who made the wrong decision, got caught, and now has to suffer consequences for it. It's plain and simple. I mean, come on, it's plain and simple. I mean, everybody has sympathy for everyone. I understand that. But the decision was made, and the decision was kept, and the flip-flops of the names, come on. I've been this route a long time. All of us have been in business. They're lawyers. They've seen contracts up and down. Come on. People testifying. It's just not fair that the 5 of us have to look like good guys or bad guys for other people's wrong decisions. No, I'm saying I just don't like, you know, I don't mind making tough decisions. I have no problem making them. And sometimes they're, you know, for somebody is somebody, and sometimes it's against. But come on. You know, you're not a totally innocent person in this whole thing, because you knew exactly what was going on from day one. It's always been Frank, 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 Frank. Well, Frank made a mistake, and now you got to pay for it. That's my opinion. So,
thank you, Commissioner Scudo. I also find that obviously there's competent, substantial evidence, in large part because of your stipulation and your agreement to work on this. I note that there is no negative prior history that was brought forward. As was commented by my colleagues, often when we see these, it is a buildup over time, and it's a question of whether it's been sufficient. Was it a call out for a fight? Was it a call? So I do acknowledge that it's relatively unusual to have this all at one time. I need to point out, as my colleagues have, I'm not unique in pointing this out, but there's a history to this extended license ordinance. As Commissioner Scudo knows better than I, there were years where these clubs were coming in and they were having problems, and there was no authority to move quickly. And we see it in other cities where they have clubs that have problems, shooting, stabbings, everything else, and they don't know how to get people out. And the hook was what John Brooks, when he said, what I needed, the tools, Commissioner Scudo, correct me if I'm wrong, but John basically said, I need these tools. I need to be able to cut their license off rapidly in order to create discipline. And we go through these hearings when we grant it, and my colleagues, all who've been up here, whoever sat in the chair, have, to the last one of them, been tough on every applicant, saying, we're telling you this is, as Deputy Mayor said, it's a privilege. And we need you to understand that. And the finger wagging that goes on, even amongst the best and the most contrite at the time, is not just at you. It's at every other applicant. And we've heard from other businesses because they know when there's bad businesses. And they say, we have an extended hour license. We're doing all this stuff. We're paying for the details. We're doing it all right. And we know that somebody's not. You guys need to crack down on this. We've had business owners come here and say, I don't want you to extend that because I'm worried that they're not going to live up to their obligation. And we have fought to keep our extended license. Staff looks at us and says, we knew what was coming. What more could we have done? This isn't a call out that we got on a 911 call. There's a lot of people there, or whoever's in the zone says, you know what, I'm going to stop in and see what's going on. They sat down on the 5th with you. They went above and beyond because they like you. They knew they could call you, Frank. And they said, Frank, this is what's coming. And there's no question that this process has identified some gaps for us that are not relevant for tonight, but at some point, this ordinance needs some tweaking. Because I think what happened here is what my colleagues have pointed out. This is not something I'm inventing, but what they pointed out. You had this license, it was valuable, you were desperate, somebody else got tossed, you had, over the years, crossed paths, either, as you said, through your kids or otherwise, and they identified a place that had what they needed, the extended hours. Because you can't operate that business to 1. And you made a tough decision, but you knew what you were doing, in my opinion. I mean, how do I look at staff and say, that's all right, we'll give them a pass? They're going to say, what more can we do? How do I look at the next business? I'll tell you heartbreak. This is not heartbreak for me. I'll tell you heartbreak. It was the day that we sat down there and we said we're going to close restaurants and bars. They were innocent. And I drove around to my friends who I've coached their kids, who I've held parties with, who I know personally. I said, I'm sorry. We're doing this before the state does it. And they're saying, but Mayor, why are you doing this? Across the street they're not, because this is right. We have to do this to protect the greater good. And we were right. And the state followed very closely. But that was heartbreak because they were innocent. You don't offer an essential service to the community. A Latin Club will open there if needs be. It'll be a new owner. But we have to do something about this ordinance because we can't have what happened here. Yes, you're not supposed to turn it over to a promoter, but we need a little more teeth on that. You're not supposed to turn over the control of the corporation that could allow something like this to happen. And I know that's no solace to you that somehow we've identified a gap, but you ran right through it. You didn't whisper to somebody, hey, Craig, I'm stuck. I'm feeling like I got in this deal and I just met with Shannon and you and I don't have any control. I don't know what to do. I'm telling them not to do it, but I'm telling you there's a problem. You should come out. I'd have a different mentality tonight. But they handed you the very advertisements that there's no other way to read those. You knew what was coming. And I know it was tough, and I know that this has probably been heartbreak at home. I know it's not easy as a family business. And I'm sure, Frank, you're carrying some guilt on this if, in fact, as you said, Sherry wanted you not to do this. But we have a problem. I can't find redemption. I want to have the grace that Commissioner Douglas talks about. He's right. But I can't find redemption in this because I don't know how to talk to the next business. What do I do the night that we have a shooting and somebody gets killed? They say, we didn't know, we gave it to a promoter. extenuating circumstances that we all have, some very catastrophic, and God bless you're here. But what do we do? And I know you don't want me to have to worry about whether you're a precedent or not, and there's probably a way to distinguish, but I cannot find the redemption here. And I've not seen a suggestion of how we do that. I'm not saying it's impossible, because we know we have a revocation on the 14th. And I must be inspired by your decision to separate from those who were giving you bad counsel. The letter that was written to this city was outrageous. The conduct that we could have had here as a circus would have been deplorable. And at some level, I have to give that contrition some value. Like, you could have kept going and said, I'm going to run this out and then use the card. But you did reverse that. And you took some of the steps that were necessary. And I know you were desperate, but I can't find the redemption tonight. I'm going to vote to continue the suspension until the 14th. I'm not sure yet if I'm there for revocation, because I think the developments of the past 48 hours, roughly, a bit longer, had that happened on August 7th, maybe we have a different situation. Maybe if there had been a true act of contrition instead of threats, we could have worked on something. But there were hundreds of hours spent that are taxpayers' hours for a 5-hour, 6-hour affair that nearly killed somebody, for events that could have been far worse and put our officers at risk, made our staff go out and do things on weekends. So tonight I can't find the redemption for you all, not before the 14th. And so I am going to vote in favor of the resolution that continues the suspension of the extended hours license, at least and through the revocation of the hearing, if that's completed on the 14th, or 60 days, whichever comes first. I'm in support of that, and I'm sorry. And I told you, Frank, I'm really personally disappointed. I know you reached out to me and left a message that you wanted to talk about the future. It would have been helpful on August 8th, 9th, 10th. And I understand you were getting bad counsel, but we have other businesses that are watching this, if not in real time. When they get violated, they're going to look to us and they're going to say, what about congas? You let them... So I apologize for that. And these are these tough decisions. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to say, because there's a messaging that somehow what we do in each individual hearing may, and it's a fact, it may, but I do consider each one of these circumstances that come before me separately, and I don't want any business to feel like, having given consideration to what comes before me, it binds me to any future decision on anything that anybody else does. With respect to continuing the suspension and whatnot, are we certain this is going to be on the 14th? Is there any basis?
The resolution right now reads, quote, effective date, this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage. And what would have to be amended for continuing it is, and the suspension of Conga's extended hours license shall remain in effect until either a hearing on the revocation of Conga's extended hour license has been completed or 60 days, whichever comes first. It is set on the 14th agenda for sure, but it's not set on the 14th as a some sort of like statutory mandate. It has to be done. It could slide, but it is set for the 14th right now.
I don't know if I'm going to be here on the 14th. I just wanted to point that out.
What I wanted to say, because we are all sitting here, because there are two ways one could go about this. Obviously, this is one decision, and I'm hearing some sentiments that we would be looking at the revocation as a separate matter and making a decision. There's also another way we could do this, in my view. We could certainly set aside the suspension and set aside that hearing on the 14th to a later date, and just kind of keep them on probation. And over the next however many months we choose, because this doesn't come up for renewal again until next April. So if we allowed them, assuming, just a thought, we put the hearing on the 14th in abeyance, set aside this suspension, and give them a couple of months to show, some level of this is how we want to move forward, then, we could still have that hearing in the future before the renewal period, and then see how they're doing.
No.
Or pull the plugs. I know they've been closed since there are 3 weekends that have already passed, and there would be 2 more.
On that, they've been closed, or they're just not operating? I'm sorry.
Well, not
operating from
right,
1
but
they're open till 1.
You have to close off liquor at 12, so, it's almost like being closed. Nobody goes there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you have to close, what happens when you have to close off liquor by midnight is that the guy who wants to keep having another drink is he's going to go somewhere else from 10. He's not going to come there, and by the time he drives somewhere else,
But that's not.
it's 2 a.m.
But that's not our thing.
No, it's not.
That's their business model.
No, I understand. I'm not, believe me, I'm not getting into whether they're wrong or right here. I think we're beyond that. If I was focused on that alone, I could not find that they're correct. But, they have been unable to operate at the level of how the business could be profitable for the last
Because of what they did, but.
Of course.
Right, it's because of what they did. It's not for any other reason.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'm just saying, I understand what you're saying, but it's not for any other reason other than
it's their
what
fault.
they did.
It's their fault.
Right.
Believe me, I'm not unconscious of all the efforts of staff. Mr. Rossman had to be paid. I'm here today. This is my second special meeting this month, so it's my job. I'm not complaining, but the fact is there's a lot of resources for these things to happen. Those goes without saying. I was just throwing it out there because we can't call each other on the phone. Don't feel like it's a good cop, bad cop, because if I feel strongly about something, I don't mind being the only one who feels a particular way. So don't feel like you've been put in a position.
No, but the vote tonight is to keep what the chief's letter was for the suspension. I'm not right, but I don't feel comfortable now after just doing this, what we did tonight, and now giving an extension, or I'm just saying, or anything like that right
You won't be here on the 14th. Okay, so
I don't know yet. As
right.
of right now, I may not be here on the 14th.
You may not be here, but I'm just trying to pitch an alternative procedure that we could, and do you mind if I call the police chief forward and find out?
No, I think this is...
Mr. Police Chief, you've heard all of this. I know you have the city's best interests at heart. What is your position, if any, on this commission, whether setting aside the suspension, continuing the suspension? From a law enforcement perspective, do you believe the concerns that brought us here are continuing one?
So, answer to your just last direct question, no, I don't think they're continuing. As far as the suspension goes, I think the suspension was effective in stopping the activities and the behavior that were in the club. So I think it was effective to do, and we've been monitoring every day they had traditionally been opened and have not seen that same behavior.
Okay, thank you, Chief. In some instances, the police chief would give their opinion, and I don't want to force you into one, but do you have any views as to strong views against us taking a determination whether to lift it or otherwise?
Point of information.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I don't disrespect what you're saying to the chief, but us 5 are making the decision. The same way He made the decision
Correct.
to do what he did. So he did what he did, okay?
But he's our chief law enforcement officer. I'm just asking if he has a view.
I hear you. But he made a decision, now we have to make a decision.
All right.
For us now to decide now to ask him what his opinion about letting them stay open again is
okay.
not...
Let
is-
me
no,
fix that
okay,
question.
okay.
Let
all
me
right.
fix that question.
Just because I don't want to be in a position right now where now I'm making a decision now
Chief,
based
I
on what he's
withdraw
going
the
to say.
question. Don't
That's
worry
not
about it.
happening.
I don't want to
Okay,
put you
but
in
that's
that.
not happening. Okay.
I'll withdraw the
You could give your opinion, but you're not going to tell me right now how I'm going to make my vote right now.
I didn't ask him
no,
to
no,
tell us
no,
how
you
to
know
vote.
that. I'm just saying,
All right.
but I don't want now, whatever he says right now is going to influence my decision.
Okay. Chief,
Okay.
I withdraw the question.
Okay.
It's okay.
Thank you, Chief.
He wrote a letter, and we made a decision. They offered to make a special meeting. We gave them the opportunity to have the special meeting, but I don't want him to come up here now and tell me, oh, yeah, I knew him for 20 years, and I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. That's not happening. I'm not trying to cut you off, but let's, staff made a choice. Staff made a decision. Staff did a lot of hard work. We know that now we have some holes in this, like the mayor said and you said, that we need to have this to have more teeth, to even give us more. I'm not giving anyone the opportunity to influence in a different way.
Joe.
Right now, my decision.
Joey,
That's all I'm
staff
saying.
influences us
No.
all the time.
No.
The reason we're sitting here is because we're the decision makers. It was
Exactly.
just asking him his
And
opinion.
if it was up to him, his decision, maybe there may be things that I would want him to
But you
have
know
done
what?
even more.
Maybe he would have said to us, you know what? They're bad actors. I don't believe they should be allowed to remain open.
I hear you.
We get
No.
opinions from staff all the time.
I hear you, but we've
Anyway,
already heard...
I don't want to bring this into disrepute or bring the chief's view, opinion.
He's not making the decision. He did his part in sending the letter. That's why we're here. Now we're going to make the decision.
All right, we could call a vote. How about
Right.
that?
Next meeting, I'm saying, next meeting, if you
I
want to
see
talk
you're
about
passionate.
something else...
It's not a
then-
food truck, Joey. It's
Right.
not a food truck.
No, I don't hear you. That's even worse.
All right, so
Most of them are gone anyway now.
Let me just say, to the credit of my colleagues,
No disrespect to you, Chief. I'm sorry.
to the credit of my colleagues, they take these matters extraordinarily seriously, and nothing is ever rubber stamped up here in this regard, and you can see the struggle internally for each of us. And I do struggle with the other point, I think, as Commissioner Douglas points out. I mean, I struggle because I don't want you to feel like, why did we even bother to dump our lawyers who were threatening all these crazy things? Maybe we would have done better with that. I can assure you, you wouldn't have. And I can assure you that I know what I would have felt for the revocation hearing. But I am hopeful that maybe between now and the revocation hearing, redemption is possible. And my vote's going to be, as it is, as a message to please find some way to generate, as Commissioner Douglas is saying, a probationary period or something. We will keep this on the 14th. Doesn't matter. We're not going to continue it. I'm concerned for Commissioner Scudo if he's unable to be here. I know his view is very important, but I also am mindful that we have to keep this going forward. I may not be here either, just FYI, so I've already let the Deputy Mayor know, but I will appear by phone.
I just want to say, God forbid what happened that night. That guy happened to be a good shot with an AR-15 and took out, forget about how many people. This thing would have been over and done. We wouldn't even had even an open discussion. We would have did an open discussion and we would have voted. I mean,
I agree. I understand.
we just happen to be very lucky.
We're blessed.
Very lucky.
We're blessed.
And now to give somebody else a second chance right off the bat like that, I don't feel comfortable with that.
And we're blessed to have this argument, and I think you understand that. All right, so we're ready to, I was going to call a question, but Deputy Mayor? Yeah, I know you're going to want the resolution amended.
Yes.
Yes, I'm mindful of that. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I'm in agreement with Mayor on this one. I want to find mitigation, but I think I don't want to make that decision until the 14th. So I hope the business stays afloat till then, and then we'll see where the chips lay on the 14th. So There is light at the end of the tunnel.
Hang on. I know, just a second, Commissioners. Let him finish the sentence. One, and two, there's a matter we need to address.
That's all I wanted to say.
All right, we had an original motion and a second. However, I've been requested by the city attorney, as I indicated, Section 4 of the resolution to be amended as follows. It currently reads, this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage and shall remain in effect until either a hearing on the revocation of Conga's extended hour license has been completed or 60 days, whichever comes first. The city attorney has suggested this amendment, with which I agree. The resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage, and the suspension of Conga's extended hours license shall remain in effect until either a hearing on the revocation of Conga's extended hour license has been completed or 60 days, whichever comes first. I first need a motion and a second, then I'll open discussion. If
I'll move it.
Motion by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Scudo. Any discussion on that as amended? Okay. Ms. Kisson, can we call the vote, or do we have to open up a public hearing based on the amended?
You do not need to open a public hearing based on the amendment.
All right. So we have a motion and a second as amended. Any further discussion? Go ahead and call the question.
Commissioner Scudo?
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas?
Yeah.
Assistant Deputy Mayor Guzman?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kirch?
Yes.
Mayor Ryan?
Yes, regrettably. We'll see you on the 14th. All right, any further business? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move it.
Motion by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Assistant Deputy Mayor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Rossman. Thank you for everything you did in service to this, and
It's starting to feel better now. Could you believe who I'm fighting?